is the Northern Ireland.
Go for it. Go for it. We'll find it. There we are. Okay. Let's just leave. Get this picture. Maybe we're on to.
This is number 6.
Yes, this man Dudley. Is he from here? Is he from close to one?
He's a new one. Never heard of him.
Is this one?
Look at it.
He is a house now.
You don't do
Yes.
porn.
Yeah.
What are those?
Yeah.
We recommence the meeting after that short break, and could I refer members of the committee to the clerk's memo, which is page 31 in your main pack, and could I also welcome to the meeting Rory Muskelly, who's the Stadium Programme Director, and Andrew Dadley, who's the Stadium Programme Architectural Programme Advisor. Again, the members of the committee have already registered any interests that they have that are relevant, financial or other. If I could just say to yourself, Rory, and to Andrew, are there any?
Yes, I'll cover that. Yes, I'll cover that in my opening remarks, if that's okay.
Oh, right, okay. Right. Well, if you want to proceed then, make your opening statement, that'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair and member of the committee, for inviting me to attend the committee today. I appreciate it's been a long day so far. I believe I have a lot of pertinent points, so bear with me. And I welcome the opportunity to further discuss the important matters that have been raised in relation to Casement Park. My name is Rory Muskelly. I'm the current Programme Director for the Regional Stadia Programme. Before starting, I'd just like to point out for the record that I was previously employed by IRFU as part of their redevelopment project on the programme. I was a project sponsor employed by IRFU from March 2012 to July 2013 when I left to go off and do other matters. I only note this as Ravenhill forms part of the wider programme. I appreciate today the focus was on Casement, however, in the interest of clarity, it would be important just to note. My role and responsibility, I was initially appointed as an interim stadium programme director in February to come in and give some temporary part-time support to the department, to the existing programme manager and stadia team. And this moved into a full-time position in August of 2014. By means of qualification, I myself graduated from University of Ulster with an honours degree in quantity surveying in 1993 and achieved my full corporate membership of the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors in 1997 and attained a full corporate membership of the Chartered Institute of Building in 1998, all whilst working for a large multinational contractor. I remain and always have been since fully qualified full corporate member of both professional bodies within the programme and project management specialism faculties of each organisation. I have a family background in construction, which helped form my formative years, support my education through local colleges, FE and other vocational night classes for additional qualifications. So I'm well versed in the realities of construction on all fronts. I've 25 years nearly experience working in the local construction sector, including a spell in the UK, both in the contracting and consultancy sides of the industry. For the past 15 years or so, I have delivered purely project and programme management duties on a range of commissions involving high value and complex projects on a project basis and a programme basis. I provide, as a guest lecturer once a year, a service to Queen's University Belfast, where I give a day's talk to the architects or the senior students in their Part 3 exams on risk and risk management and the practical application of these techniques in programme and project management skills as part of their final preparation course. I have been working on design and build contracts for probably circa 20 years as a practitioner, both as a client-side advisor, as an administrator of the contracts itself, and also on the contracting side of the industry. So mechanics of the design and build contracts, not only a working knowledge, but demonstrable evidence of delivering projects under them. Recent projects I've been involved in leading to, for which I was responsible for leading the delivery, as I said, include the Kingspan Stadium for the period up to July 2013, and prior to that the Titanic Belfast, on which from 2008 to 2012 I led the independent technical advisory team who did the early due diligence work on the project, who was responsible for developing and establishing the built-in contract. The final report of my team, led by myself in the pre-contract era, was the basis of the final executive approval for the investment decision prior to the award of the built-in contract. I then moved and acted as the sole named project manager for the built-in contract. So I was the named project manager for the administration of the £73 million NEC Option A Design and Build contract, and as part of that led a team of multidisciplinary professionals who supported me. I would note to date my experience of design and build has been successful delivery, all open, all statutory compliant. Knowledge for the committee, it's a technical arena, but hopefully that's what I'm hoping to shed some light on today. I say that just in the context of my background in terms of the process of design development, the assessment of designs, the implementation on site, and all associated financial risk and technical matters. Again, Titanic certainly involved complex stakeholder management skills, which included, for example, engagement with the PSNI, counter-terrorists, security advisors, etc., due to the high nature profile of the project. I'm joined today by my colleague Andrew Dadley. Andrew is a chartered architect, a member of the Association of Project Managers. Andrew currently acts as the architectural programme advisor to the department since October of 14. And Andrew's main activities, aside from supporting me here today, are to help manage, coordinate and monitor and advise in the delivery of some technical aspects of the stadium programmes and work both with the governing bodies, development officers and other colleagues within the department. Primarily with a focus on ensuring technical aspects of projects conform with departmental, statutory and legislative requirements, as well as advising on social procurement issues, sustainability clauses and regulatory guidance. Andrew's experience would speak for itself, but a sample would include his role in the Maison Cash Development Corporation as a senior project manager, Macadam Design and Private Practice. Projects include the Bangor Olympic Leisure Centre pool, Northwest Regional College, Northwest Regional College, Conway Mill refurbishment, Liverpool University Hospital. Sorry?
Oh my goodness, there's only two of you. We're very impressed.
Well,
We've got your technical.
Yes.
well, that was the end of it, and the Belfast City Council.
Just let them.
The
I know we're
Belfast
impressed, but just let them continue.
City Council is centred 60 million. I say that because the common thread here is technically complex projects in a multi-stakeholder environment. A large number of which delivered under a comparable contractual framework, which, as we'll later see, is aligned to and has been for a number of years, the best practice advice of Central Procurement Directorate. Moving on then from the background to us as individuals. I just reaffirm, obviously, the stadium programme is a programme for government commitment. It's designed to bring social and economic benefits. The commitments already delivered the Kingspan project very well for Ulster Rugby. Construction work at Windsor Park for the IFA is moving very well, and members will be very well aware that all current focus is on the current interim arrangements for the housing of the international fixture in June of 13, which in the very near future. That leaves Casement Project, again a large capital project under the programme that offers a key opportunity to create a stadium not only that meets the objectives of the strategic needs of the GAA, but also make a positive difference in the lives of people in West Belfast and beyond, providing economic and social benefits to everyone. The approach to Casement Park from the deployment's point of view has been consistent across the programme, with the same necessary checks and balances built into the process. This will start off at the OBC stage, the legal agreements, the checks which will underpin grant aid, through the various planning, contract selection, tendering, detailed design, delivery and ultimate licensing and operational readiness stages. At OBC stage, I actually welcome the fact that site restrictions were acknowledged, and that I welcome the input that SNI were involved and input it to the consideration of the site. Indeed, this would help underpin the development through the subsequent process. Within the OBC, whilst noted the site challenges, the risks do not appear to be disproportionate or reflect that the site is not capable of being developed in order to deliver the regional stadia location. Indeed, the justification and the subsequent internal processes and approvals at OBC underpins and gives us that confidence that it was right to take it forward. The planning process itself and all the work leading up to the submission in June 13 is well evidenced. The work of the STG, again, as at this date, does not present a picture of serious issues. So for clarity, I can only speak on my involvement in the programme during my time. After that, I'm speaking from a factual position from what the evidence in the department's files and correspondence reflects. So just for absolute clarity. The conditions of contract for the NEC Option A built-in contract with the design and build contract itself is a calculated apportionment of risk transfer, again to an experienced contractor, which again provides a further level of assurance. There's a number of measures built in. We'll talk in detail around how construction work cannot start and significant public money is drawn down until the checks and balances have been addressed. Again, under this programme, ultimate responsibility for the delivery of a compliant stadium rests with the delivery of a design and build expert contractor. Previous members of DCAL have made the department's position absolutely clear in this issue. In respect of DCAL is absolutely committed to developing and delivering a new stadium in compliance with health and safety requirements. Noted before, the redevelopment Casement Park cannot and will not open without a valid and compliant safety certificate process, which is again has been noted as separate from the planning consent. Just a very short note, just to acknowledge that as the committee is aware, the Minister's instigated a number of independent investigations into the allegations raised by the chair of the STG back on the 30th of April. And this investigation into whistleblowing is currently being carried out by DFP. The Minister has also instigated a PAR, Project Assessment Review, by the Cabinet Office, and this is underway with indeed a briefing day already being held on Tuesday of this week with the panel. The Minister has made it clear from the outset that the output of this PAR shall be made public. I personally welcome this technical review. We've been putting a lot of resource into service in this review. I think it'll serve the project, the programme and the committee well, and I look forward to the forthcoming engagement with them. In that context, it's just important that my evidence today doesn't in any way prejudice the independent, certainly the investigation around the whistleblowing. In respect to the technical matters in my watch and the technical matters contained in the files, I certainly aim to share as much as feasibly possible, but I'll be cautious about straying into areas and speculating on reasons for behaviours, views, etc. before my time, which I hope members will understand in light of the ongoing whistleblowing allegation. I'd also just note, certainly at a not too distant future, it is the intention for the GAA to submit a further planning application. And again, I will be cautious around anything that potentially could prejudice any forthcoming application. My role as a programme director itself, I'm responsible for leading and overseeing the delivery of the regional stadia programme and supporting the SRO, Cynthia Smith, in her role. Integral to this is the development of strategies, structures and policies which will help the efficient delivery of the 3 stadium projects under the programme within the various constraints of time, cost and quality. I'm currently aided in my role by the programme support team, which comprises of a programme manager, currently Angela Fitzpatrick, a programme architect, Andrew Dadley, my colleague here with specialist knowledge, as I've noted earlier on, and a team of programme delivery staff who I have a proven track record in the project management of capital projects and specific experience for some of them in a range of issues including governance, finance and legal matters, as some of the staff indeed came from SNI under the original transfer of staff down to the department. I quickly just want to note that under governance structures, as previously noted, the development of any major capital programme is a process. The capital development process involves a series of key people: the organisation, commissioning the project, the funders, local people, users, economists, technical advisors, legal planners, etc. A raft of, and all these people need to contribute to the project. The programme SROs previously noted in terms of the principles for managing successful programmes and how the programme has been structured. The governance structures reflect that from Stadium Programme Sponsor Board, a departmental programme board, the project boards for each of the 3 stadium projects, and then steering groups below that. I fully understand on the face of it, it's a complex, and I believe earlier comments around any diagrammatic structures we can help to share with that, we certainly will. I should note, I think we are due for the 8th to return a further bundle of information. I believe we'll be intending that bundle before that. It's unfortunate we couldn't get it today. There was a number of consultations, etc., required to be done. It's well progressed. I can assure you, as I go through this, I have a very strong interest in making the committee well aware of the evidence-based approach of what I'm saying. So the agreed programme structure itself was formalised through each project under the programme in respect of MOUs and legal agreements, and the MOU provides clarity in terms of the organisation, structures, roles and responsibilities. In terms of reference, again, formalised for each of the programme and project. The sponsor board we spoke about before, chaired by the Minister, with representation from 3 government bodies, and the SRO, the IDMs, the project director, representation for NI at those meetings. The departmental stadium board is chaired by the SRO, includes myself as programme director, director of corporate services, my programme manager and other project team members. Under the 3 projects themselves, then the core aspects are a steering group, project steering group, again aligned to the best practice OGC language. This is chaired by a project sponsor, and it consists of representatives from key stakeholders and design team members. The purpose of this group is to review, monitor and make recommendations to the project board in respect of the contractual technical aspects of the project. The steering group is really there to support the project sponsor in his day-to-day activities and agreeing what goes up the line to project board level. The project board itself is chaired by the project SRO, and the board provides overall direction and management of the project within the boundaries of the project mandate, i.e. under the MOU. The board's accountable for the success of the project with separate investment decision makers. It's responsible for the overall progress of the project and delivered in the timescale agreed. A few just pertinent bullet points around, again, the step 3 process. I believe some of this already has been previously covered, but again, I've spoken about the governance structures in place. I have spoken originally about the NEC Option A contract, and we'll come back to it, which is a design and build contract on the basis of a fixed price lump sum. It does have the ability to vary, but it's a design and build contract for a fixed price sum. This model of contract selection strategy, again endorsed by CPD, aligns very well to the preferred route over the past number of years, and indeed the final contract and selection strategy would have been endorsed by CPD. So I'm glad to be sitting in a position again to be part of another NEC Option A D&B contract, not only because of the endorsement but the proven track record. The team itself, the GAA, were responsible with input from the department and CPD for the procurement of experts, both the consultancy side and the construction side, and I will come back to that very briefly. The DECAL itself built up a dedicated team within the department with various technical expertise in order to respond to this PFG priority. This included programme directors, myself, my predecessor, with, again, successful experience in delivering large-scale capital construction. The department put in place various checks and balances. Again, gates do not proceed until gates are cleared. Various stages: planning, full business case approvals, funding agreement, execution of the building contract, construction notice, etc. Relatively straightforward, again, protecting and building in the gates at every point. On casement, the step through in the approval processes included obtaining the planning permission, approving the FBC, executing the funding agreement, a gateway review, an OGC gateway review at investment decision level, which is paramount, and then moving only then to actually appointing the contractor. Members have previously noted the separation in the planning statutory process and the separate subsequent safety certification by the local council. The building contract, and I think it's important to touch this because it will come up later on, contains essentially two distinct phases. You have a pre-construction phase, or a development phase, it's sometimes called, where the original employer's requirements are worked up in detail by the contractor. Only when various gates are passed, you then move into the full construction phase itself. It's important to note that we are, and always have been, in the pre-construction phase of Casement Park, with ongoing work still to be completed. The trigger to enter and move from one phase to the other is the construction notice itself. This is issued by the project manager, who is responsible for administering the building contract. So that is an external consultant, a very large multinational firm, experienced in contract administration and construction.
Could I ask, if you don't mind, apologies for interrupting, who's the project manager, this person you're talking about?
The named individual would be Mark Gillooly from Mott MacDonald.
Mark?
Gillooly
from
a company
Mott
called
MacDonald.
Mott MacDonald.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, I'll just clarify that. The lead organisation for the client-side consultancy team is Mott MacDonald.
Right.
A sub-consultant of theirs is G&T, Gardner and Theobald,
Yep.
and Mark Gillooly is a G&T employee.
Oh, right, okay, thank you.
So it's not uncommon that you have one lead economic operator, and below that team will consist of a specialist project manager, specialist architect, specialist engineers, all various sub-consult disciplines. So suffice to say, with any large scale, indeed, in this arena, all those firms carry professional indemnity insurance. It's a high-profile project, and again, a further standard industry way to do business is checking all those levels of assurance. So the construction notice hasn't been issued. We'll come and have a discussion around that, no doubt. It's issued by the project manager itself, and certainly within the building contract we specifically developed in conjunction with CPD included a number of clauses, one of which include a check around attaining statutory approvals and sign off by advisory bodies. The STG was established at the behest of DCAL and clearly viewed as a key advisory body. The work's yet to be done on some remaining aspects that we'll discuss in detail around specifically emergency exiting. But I want to drill into the work that has been done to date, because I believe there's a misunderstanding around quantum of work that has been done on the emergency exiting. So, and that is the completion of that is one of the core last elements of the pre-construction activities. I would just note as a factual, there was no STG reports issued in 2014. The last, indeed all three STG reports were issued in 2013. I just want to move on now to I've covered the approvals process. I want to get into the detail of the emergency evacuation. I think it's important to note here that work did commence and was undertaken on the design to address emergency emergency exiting scenarios. Following discussions with STG, and we'll talk about this in detail later. With the subsequent JR outcome, it was clear this work wasn't concluded for a number of reasons. This work, in its time, has manifested itself in the form of design drawings, crowd modelling calculations based on emergency scenarios. Specifically, one piece of work which, and I'll read the scope of it out, looks at the loss of part stroke all of the Andersonstown frontage. The department itself, suffice to say, has put in place a number of aligned to the conditions of contract and drawdown fund grant management processes and procedures again throughout the funding agreement and reflected in the built contracts, not only for the contractor but the design team as well. I've spoke about securing planning permission, the FBC, appointing the design team, appointing the contractor, funding agreement, etc. And each step through culminating in the complete the front end design and move to the significant construction work. I'd just like to very briefly, again with any large complex capital project, advise the committee on the two principal parties involved and the background to them. The design team itself, that procured by the Ulster Council with full knowledge and input with ourselves and supported by CPD, are led by Matt MacDonald, as I've said. They include a number of specialist consultants, including the Populous Sports Architects team. Some of Populous's recent work in the UK and wider afield would include the Emirates Stadium in London in 2006, Wembley Stadium in 2007, the Aviva Stadium in Dublin in 2010, the London Olympic Stadium in 2012, the Etihad Stadium in Melbourne, the Soccer City in Johannesburg, and a significant development in Marlins Park in Miami around a sample. On the corresponding contracting side that was procured, you'll often hear the phrase IST, Integrated Supply Team. This team is made up of AFL Architects, Tenos Fire Engineers, SKM/Jacobs Civil and Structural Engineers, and Heron Buckingham Group as a joint venture contractor. Some of the sporting venues that these high calibre organisations also would have been involved in, again only a sample to give a flavour, are the Amex Stadium in Brighton, which is capacity of 32,000, the Chelsea Football Stadium at 42,000 capacity, Thomond Park itself, or IRFU, the Welford Road Leicester Tigers ground for rugby at 30,000, the South African 46,000, and indeed Old Trafford Manchester 75,000, as well as Leicester City Football Club at 42,000. On a local note, the Odyssey project in Belfast, 10,000 capacity, has also had some of that team heavily involved in it. I think it's pertinent just to get a flavour for the experience and the calibre of the teams that ended up being appointed through the standard process to identify the most economically advantageous tender, which was a combination of quality and cost assessment. So the credentials and the calibre and the background, I think, of the organisations and the respective parties hopefully are noted. And again, a consistent message from the contractor and the consultants has been the distinction in stadium development between the planning process in the UK and Northern Ireland, which is to assess the planning merits of a scheme which precedes the pursuance of a subsequent safety certificate for the stadium. And again, Casement Park, similarly, two separate regulatory bodies and processes. Just to tease into some of the detail now around some previous comments, and hopefully will lead to practical questioning. The matter of planning submission without STG sign-off, I'd like to talk about. And I want to again say this from the context of what the files present. It was before my time. I'm speaking from what the files present from an evidence-based point of view. The 19th, the evening of the 19th, I believe, of June 2013, saw the submission of the planning application itself. And certainly, I have an email it's only a matter of lines, but I think it's pertinent. I think it shows the status at the time. I think it's only right that should be shared with the committee and reflected upon. It's a note from the chair of the STG to our project architect at the time, and Carl Southern. Carl, as you will be aware, the STG have been assessing the various proposals forwarded by the design team with regard to Casement Park. Be aware of the issues relating to the site and the location and the landlocked nature of the site. It's led to a unique exiting arrangement and some constraints on design. There have been ongoing discussions and revisions to the exiting strategy in recent days, with a number of variations being applied following the findings of some modelling exercises. The STG is awaiting some further information / revisions to internal specifications / designers / dimensions from the design team. However, these would appear to be minor in nature and will be reviewed accordingly. In the interim, the STG consider that there is the potential for an S factor of 1 and a P factor of 1 to be applied, subject to any revisions to the proposals being agreed, and a suitable management plan for the venue being developed. The management plan in particular should detail and contain suitable emergency exiting arrangements. As you'll be aware, the S and P factors will be reviewed following fixtures hosted at the venue and will be based on how the design and management arrangements work in practice. The report of the STG will follow after further information is received from the design team. I can only take from the files that was a statement at the time on the day of planning submission. I let the words speak for themselves. We will undoubtedly come back to the timing of when emergency exiting plans are developed, when's the right time for them to be developed, who owns them and how they're developed. I think a pertinent point to that is also the acknowledgement that under the process the STG was set up to advise in the design development during the delivery period, for want of a better word, and then upon completion an operational asset, whilst ironically the same individual, ongoing regulatory checks and balances form under a different group, the Safety Advisory Group, I believe. And that's where, when you have it built, a different group then carry out the regular checks and have the ability then to impose restrictions on the S or P factors. So, and that's reflected in that note, and it's consistent with the design evolution, the purpose of the STG, and then the subsequent ongoing performance from a management and operational point of view. So really want to hone into the bricks and mortar aspect of design development, and then in operational life, if it's badly managed, if there's not enough stewards, etc., absolutely there's a separate process post-completion that the bodies are duty bound to work under. Actually, certainly in the Casement Park funding agreement, we put as an express condition that during the operational phase of the asset, over the post-completion, that they have an obligation to continually run the facility in full compliance, as you'd expect. But so I suppose even at that stage, we acknowledged we weren't washing our hands of it on the day of opening, for want of a better word. So I believe that's pertinent, and again, this will be included within the bundle. The next area I'd like to just talk about is the ongoing design process itself. And I feel it's important to show the committee that the contractual framework, which was set up under the design and build basis, did indeed carry on with design work as required under this framework. This is important as to show that it's not like in a traditional build-only scheme, as they're called, where the design is fully completed and then you hand it over to a build-only contractor. Certainly becoming less and less common when many years ago, and the role of architect was more extensive in that the architect would have traditionally designed every aspect of a project, right down to the type of door handle, the detailing and the skirting, etc. As the industry and value for money and all this good stuff happened, the design and build has become more prevalent. Again, an industry norm now, the overarching ethos is it allows early contractor involvement. It lets the contractor bring to the table the bits that he's good at and lets the architect focus on the bits that's paramount importance to the client. So, again, I say this against the background that fully accepted by CPE Directorate as a procurement and contract directorate strategy. I think it's important because, and I fully understand where it's easy for technical people that have been immersed in this world for a long period of time. It does take some time, and I would fully welcome any further briefing or the committee to avail of any other explanation around the mechanics of this and what it means. Because a key part, which I personally and the department welcomes, indeed with the power, is to understand at the right time, did we do the right thing, and were we at the right point in the journey. So the contractual context of that is imperative to understand. So there's been a number of points or notes made around a lack of ongoing evidence, specifically around emergency evacuations. Again, speaking for the file prior to my time, I would just note a letter from Paul Scott to Kieran McGurk on the 17th of February, which I believe shows evidence of ongoing design in this matter. Thank you for a useful meeting.
Which year?
Sorry?
Which year?
Sorry, 17th of February 2014. Apologies. So a letter from the chair of the STG to Kieran McGurk, who at that time was the programme manager, pivotal role on the project. Thank you for a useful meeting on the 14th of February 14, which enabled us all to understand issues regarding Casement Park. It should be noted that arrangements discussed would be for emergency use only at times of high capacity and completely distinct from normal everyday exiting arrangements. Although there are deviations, and it talks about the code, it is acceptable under the code to deviate from the guidance provided an equal or greater level of safety is provided for spectators. So that confers me some design latitude within the code that acknowledges as long as the overarching level is not compromised.
What date was that again? 14th of the 4th?
2014.
The letter is dated the 17th of February.
17th, okay, I got it.
So, Support NI is advising that consideration should be given to some the following design changes depending on the scale of the opportunities for each application. The application would have the potential to achieve the emergency exiting capacity. So I was looking at existing widths on the existing exits, which I believe was subsequently increased. I was looking at potential for an additional exit point, possibly in the southeast corner, and looking at maximising areas of relative safety within the venue itself. It goes on to say, options outlined above will require detailed design work coupled with flow calculations to demonstrate that concourses and gangways could support the emergency exiting process, but in principle present potential solutions. Consideration should be given as to how vehicular construction on the roadways and footpaths in the area around the stadium could be limited to support expected flow of visitors. So consideration to factors outside of the site in respect of vehicular, again, was noted. On the note, SNI offers ongoing support. We continue to assist in seeking find solutions, etc., and when appropriate will liaise with the other agencies represented on the STG. Perhaps it would be useful to meet in the near future. This was as at the 17th of February 14, and on the face of what I find in the files, it to me does not present a picture of imminent failure or fundamental issue. But again, I can only deal with the facts of the time. On the 30th of April 2014, the chair of the STG with another colleague attended the PSG meeting where the decal architect gave updates to the chair and his colleague at the time. And the minutes of the PSG meeting in 16th of April, I previously noted that Paul, as chair, and his colleague would be invited to attend ESG meetings, either at the beginning or the end, to talk about STG matters. And this was after, from the file, previous interaction between SNI and DCALPERM 2nd March. So undertakings given were put in place, and the first one happened probably a matter of weeks after that taking. On the 2nd of May 2014, there was an email exchange between the Populous architect, the Decal architect, GA, etc., which notes ongoing discussions around the enlarged site, stroke Andersonstown Road closed evacuation scenario and fire engineering calculations. Again, a further piece of work, a document produced by the lead consultant, May 14, is clearly titled External Emergency Evacuation Crowd Modelling Parameters. And to me, lifting the file is clear evidence of ongoing design work in relation to emergency exiting. The intro to the document, I'll just say this because it'll undoubtedly come up. I firmly believe very technical documents should be presented by their authors and technical people. I'll try and set the context, but in no way am I trying to present the technical content of it. But I think the title of it, the introduction, that says this document outlines the input parameters and assumptions for additional crowd modelling of a 38,000 capacity event at Casement Park. In the event that exits leading on the Andersonstown Road, etc., are blocked or unavailable for emergency egress. From May to the culmination in November, when a report by a specialist engineering firm under the design team Tenos was produced, and it was that evidences to me that as late as November 2014, in the final stages of the JR hearing, design work on emergency evacuation was being carried out. The Tenos report looks like it was issued in late November, just 2 weeks or so prior to the JR termination. It would have been in various drafts, etc., so the exact status. This report was shared with the chair of the STG, and indeed 1 page of this report is included within the STG's previous chair evidence to the committee. So I'm on the face of the documentation, the pages out of the report, the chair had the report, and I believe it's pertinent to discuss it. As I said, I won't comment on the technical nature or content of the report because the technical nature of it, but I believe it's relevant in the wider context of setting the scene and what we're talking about.
Can we just check the date of that report? Or the date that it's in the All Scots?
It's page 195 in the STG bundle.
Yes, in the Paul Scott bundle.
The report itself on the QA page is 26th of November. There would have been previous iterations, so, but again, November 14th. So, I think not only I'm trying to give an accurate evidence-based statement just on what was in place. I think it would be pertinent for the committee just also to understand the background to the emergency evacuation plan itself and the critical role Blue Light Services play in informing final operational plans, of which the emergency procedures are key. So, just apologies 1 second, but I think this is the emergency exiting scenario planning as the aspects of the physical design, but more importantly moves into operational response models. I think no one disputes it is a core aspect, and I believe SNI earlier noted.
Excuse me, I was reading and probably mistake. Do we get, are you giving us that full report, in particular Annex A5?
I believe that's part of a proposed GAA presentation because of the technical nature of it.
We don't have, you were going to refer to this report,
One page.
right?
We have one page, but just one page.
You've one page already. I'll certainly, as part of the consultation we're doing with the GAA, we're seeing what we can, and I can assure you I intend to issue the committee with whatever we can. The emergency plan, definition of an emergency plan in the Green Guide in the glossary is an emergency plan.
Sorry, green or red?
Yeah, we'll stick to the red plan, actually, because Oliver's insisted. So.
Oh,
Sorry, Chair, just for clarification, in a previous question to Mr Scott, when he addressed the committee here, I specifically asked him a question on the red and green guide and about differences between them, and are they often used similarly to help a project along or to help with advice, and he agreed that they were, that there was and that was the case here in the UK. So I would just maybe like clarification.
I'd maybe just on that note, and if I'd let Andrew come in and give a very succinct, because it actually underpins a fundamental evidence-based approach to the department in order to hit the highest bar possible. So I'll let Andrew.
Just ask before Andrew comes in.
Apologies.
Am I right, just for the record again, in saying that the red guide, and I have no concept at all of what the difference is between the red and the green guide in terms of content, but in terms of the red guide, is that the one that is on your departmental website?
Yes, well, that would be the one.
It is on the DECAL website.
The red one is the Northern Ireland version. The green guide.
And the red one is the one that's on the DECAL website, because it was published by DECAL.
It's yes, DECAL are responsible for the way
It was DECAL published and it's on their website. That's fine, thank you.
Yeah, just to be clear, as I think was said this morning, Green Guide is used in say England, Scotland and Wales, and then we have a red guide in England. They are pretty much the same, but in the contract for Casement Park, it was very clear that the both the design team and the contractor was to use both a guidance, and whichever one was the highest, most onerous, they had to design to that one.
Okay.
So in essence, we were taking the best of both.
That's helpful, thank you.
Or indeed the most onerous. An example would be the fire compartmentation, where my understanding is the green guide, the red guide is more onerous, so we picked the most onerous position, highest standard, yes. Which is quite, in the UK, quite unique, I would suggest. So
thank you.
The fundamental principle of invest in the highest possible standard is enshrined for those early principles. So just specifically as we move into the definition under the green guide, is that an emergency plan is prepared and owned by the emergency services for dealing with a major incident at the venue or in the vicinity, for example, explosion, toxic release, large fire, etc. It's also known as an emergency procedure plan or a major incident plan. And I think that's pertinent to bear in mind, because as we talk about when is the logical time to develop that, you can see ownership, input of blue light services, etc., from an operational point of view is paramount. So if I can move on.
Sorry, just draw your conclusion.
Well, again, on the basis that the emergency evacuation plan and the planning scenario for it is the key chapter in the safety event management plan. So that is the manual that before the stadium opens, or just as the stadium opens, is the fundamental Bible into how to run the stadium from an operational point of view.
If we could just make one other point, if I could ask all members to speak to the chair at this point, wouldn't they?
Now listen up, you lot.
Yes. Mirror. Hot kettle, yes. Okay.
On that note, so the relevance or conclusion of that, the emergency exiting procedures that the guide itself said is fundamental with blue light input from the emergency services is the chapter in the how to run a stadium compliance point of view manual. So that is the manual that contains the section which also shows when control of the ground moves from a safety officer to the police taking control, and in the event of a major incident, the police take control, it's their call. So a relevant sort of interesting, again presented through the files, is that in 2009 for the old Casement Park site, there was a multi-agency emergency response plan, and again ownership of the document, the consultation of the document, Blue Light Services are paramount to it. Indeed, in Ravenhill, in the final throes prior to operational commencement, the chapter on emergency evacuation is shared RFU PSNI. So that level of engagement, as in what will happen at various points where on a practical basis, contact numbers, etc., can only be done when you're at a relatively advanced stage in planning for operational readiness. But undoubtedly we'll come back to that. So I say that from the context of there's been a consistent message that the GAA or the department didn't deliver an emergency evacuation plan. We were inherently party to the ongoing design development work, but the plan itself, as you can clearly see, needs the second half of the equation, and that's irrelevant. I say that purely from the timing of it, and again in later sessions I hope other more wiser people will come back with benchmarked evidence around timeline on that. I'm more than happy we'll get into the detail around what's essentially a risk-based approach and value for money. I'm more than happy to discuss that through, but I think just from a factual point of view, it's important to recognise that definition and the parties that play into it.
Sorry, Chair, just before he goes on, are you saying that that was not the case, that the GAA did not have to produce this plan?
No, I'm setting the context, first of all, around the definition of the emergency plan. And
Who's going to provide that plan?
well, you can see, and this will be the view as we'll touch on later around the designers. It's where the glossary itself is prepared and owned by the emergency services. So in the event of a major incident,
Yes, it's quite a slightly different thing perhaps, right, but go ahead.
so
That's outside more than inside.
or with inside. So it says that if we're dealing with a major incident at the venue or in the vicinity. So again, that's what it says. So it's not restricted to the red line on one side. It's
Who was developing the plan? That's what I've asked.
Can I ask just, rather than we interrupt with a lot of questions, are you counting here to the end of it, the presentation?
shouldn't be another 5 minutes or so.
5 minutes. Look, could we hold our questions until
Because
until
of
5 minutes?
conflicts table tab 20.
Absolutely. Yeah. If it is, then Rory finished, and then we'll
Okay. So that's, as I said, all I've tried to share there is the Green Guide definition of the emergency plan. Positions of the designers in respect to the Andersonstown Road. Again, this is under the context of ongoing work. There's a very important letter given by the populace, who are the exemplar architects on the client side. That was a letter to the GA on the 7th of April. It clearly states that the current design complies with technical requirements of the Green Guide and the Red Guide, and whichever is more onerous. The proposal has been developed to make use of the Andersonstown Road as the constraints of the site dictate it's not feasible to provide a zone 4 and 5 within the site. The Andersonstown Road frontage is used as the entrance, exit, prime points, and as such will need to be closed to traffic so as to provide a safe gathering point beyond the perimeter of the building. The architectural arrangements have been developed to achieve a safe exit scenario as described within the Safety at Sports Grounds documents. Physical proposals will need to be supported by operational plans and management strategies before the authority will be able to issue a certificate and ensure full capacity events will be granted. So, again, I've clearly, just from an evidence-based point of view, in April 14, the architect saying this is the position and what we've done around the physical proposals will need to be supported by operational plans and management strategies going forward before you can get your licence. So I note, and I believe again, this has previously been noted that the PSNI Chief Inspector himself in October of 14 noted that they remain supportive, broadly supportive of the proposed traffic management plan. Note there are a number of measures that require further refinement in order to ensure minimum disruption or disruption to the local community community life is kept to a minimum. And PSI confirmed they remain willing to sit on the event management board. PSNI will continue to take an active role in event management planning. So as late as 14, again, file presents to me that the PSNI are content with discussions, are happy to look at it. And again, the reference even to an event management board, which again was another deliverable that is still in its infancies. The time for the establishment of that is in the early stages when we move to construction, where you have a year and a half, 2 year period to have the people in the seats that will be long-term responsible for the final delivery of the asset. That along with a separate community board, I understand are required to be put in place, again as envisaged under the funding agreement. And that's a logical, clear forum to have in place, not only the day before you open, but say a year in advance. It's a bit like at rugby, the appointment of a stadium manager. You don't wait to the last moment, but at the same time, you don't hire them 4 years before it's ready to open. You don't hire them potentially before you start building. So it's a timing issue. So it would feel to me consistent with that. A final, just a couple of points that I need to pick up and clarify a few things. Again, based on the evidence in the project files, it's clear to me that there was some outputs that the department did not receive from the STG up to a certain point in time. On 4th of April 2014, the DECAL architect then wrote to Sport NI after SNI proposed to release STG notes/minutes under a FOI request. And this came to light because earlier SNI had written to DECAL 14th of March stating their intention to release information from 5 separate STG meetings held between February 13 and January 14. So I presume they're the first 5 logical out of the total of 7. The note from Carl Southern, the then DECAL project architect, to the SNI staff or officer and accounting officer copied in cites that at the time of receipt, i.e. the 14th, 3rd, this was the first time DECAL and the stadium team had sight of the content of the documents. And also note that the department and the Ulster Council, the GAA, are cited within them on several occasions. It notes there appears to be some confusion regarding the status of the documents as minutes or notes, which I believe we've covered before. The email from the DECAL architect goes on to note the STG is an outworking and advisor to the regional stadium programme, and therefore DECAL should be copied into all correspondence prepared by the STG. This includes documentation and draft for review and comment by the group. Please ensure this communication is passed to the chair of the group. Look forward to our continued relationship. Again, the relevance of this as it presents in the file is that it was only in late March 14, i.e. the 27th, that DECAL received a bundle of the previous 5 STGs, which represent a period from February 13 to 7th of January 14 inclusive. So again, clear from the file there was an issue around communication in my view. Just I believe it was touched on earlier, and I think it's an excellent point to make from a technical point of view, that under Prince 2 in my world and Andrew's world and the world of capital delivery, there is an acceptance that an issue is something that's already happened and a risk is something that may happen. We need to be very clear from generally in capital delivery the difference between risks and issues. And I actually welcome that the power will help bring clarity around this matter. When was it a risk? When was it an issue? When was it a concern? and focus on how concerns were handled. 'Cause those are the key questions for me, not from a technical point of view, but also a large part of the thrust. There's been a lot of submissions and statements and anecdotal statements. In my world, the difference between needs to be recognised, and I just think it's pertinent. It was an excellent point to make earlier on. I thought it was relevant just to make that forward. The final couple of points here, just in terms of the STG going forward, committees should be aware that there was discussions of the work of the STG decal and the project team was being discussed from December 14, fundamentally aimed at making the STG and design development process more efficient and better. An output of a discussion between SNI and decal included a discussion in circulating terms of reference and providing SG papers, etc. to decal. And there was a further exchange of emails between myself and Nick Harkness of Sport NI, and subsequently in March and April, building up to the terminology around the re-engagement of the STG in an advisory capacity to support any new design. I say that from the point of view that there's an allegation that X days before the chair of the STG came to the committee, there was a spate of activity. I'm more than confident the show, and indeed this morning it was referenced, the meeting and discussions and drivers behind from December was about looking forward. And this ties in with my period coming into the department, where I came in, took stock of the situation, and only interested in looking forward. I had no interest in going back over old ground. My focus is on project delivery. And it was clear to me greater efficiencies would be brought to the process, allow the experts to fulfil their expert role, allow the maturity of discussion to happen, but in a factual, methodical way that's communicated to the right people at the right time. And again, bearing in mind previous comments on timing of notes and minutes and reports and etc. I believe it was fully relevant to make that point. I understand just from a submission made this morning there was a in the SNI bundle there was a note around no reply to 2 emails from myself, just from a practical point, just to try and close out. I believe there's a citation about an email from the 12th of May 15 from Sport NI, Nick Harkness to myself, but being very enthusiastic to support the offer of second opinion to me with no reply. The note wasn't sent on the 12th of May, it was sent on the 23rd of March 15 and I replied on the 26th of March, so again I picked that up in the submission, but on the case of the presentation, that's just the facts. Finally, if I can just pick up a few points from this morning. The discussion around the the middle STG report was the subject of a few discussions today, but previously, and especially around the inference or the fact that it was comments on the report, etc., and the role of the previous decal architect. The paper in question is dated, the report, it's untitled, it says Casement Park Stadium Redevelopment Safety Technical Group Report. It said reviewed on the 4th of June 13 and based on information available at the time. The report is not, has no note of an author or a date as to the publication itself or covering page. Clearly we're all in agreement that originated from the chair of the STG. There's no issue around that. What I, again, from going through the file, this email, this was issued on the 19th of September to Carl Southern from Brenda Art at Sport NI, which, with the "Hi Carl, please find attached Casement Park STG report. If you require further information, please feel free to contact me." And I say this because I can only accept that it's the same report, because the previous report was a year earlier. The subsequent report was dated October, so it can only be this report. But immediately, literally that day, that evening, Carl Southern replied back directly to Paul and said, "Paul, thanks for the report. I've not had a chance to read the whole thing in detail yet. However, having read the conclusion, we require clarification around a few following statements that suggest, the design to be found lacking." And it moves into comments the next day from Carl to Paul, where Paul and I have independently reviewed the report and identified a number of significant issues in terms of factual correctness, grammar, relevant content, and assumptions-based comment. The issues are threaded throughout the report and would not be expedient to comment on every item in detail in an email. And therefore, we suggest in the first instance we meet to undertake a page turn. There's some subsequent correspondence literally throughout the day, the overarching tone of it is we need clarity and definition around what are the facts, where it's compliant, where it's not, and the recommendations. Again, happy to share those, but I think it's important to set the tone that the file, as I read it, sees a relatively swift reaction by the decal architect, initially with I've just received this, and the next day follow up on some of the technical matters. Just very succinctly, I'll try and close out a few last points, if that's agreeable. Just to pick up some of the points this morning, just again from a factual point of view, we spoke about the SNI involvement in the OBC. I see that as a positive in terms of the OBC was as informed as possible from a practical point of view. I would welcome the acknowledgement, because I struggled to find any evidence of documentary evidence that Carl Southern didn't want to attend or didn't intend to attend any meetings. I understand the SNI advised there was an oral communication. You'll have Mr. Southern with you in due course. I'll let that. I'm glad that Sport and I note and acknowledge in the early stages how my predecessor took on the advice of SNI in terms of the establishment, and just note that irrespective of where the terms of reference were meant to originate from, clearly SNI set up a defined membership and carried and operated and moved forward. The point was touched on earlier, and it comes back to the design and build discussion. And for me, certainly as a construction professional, it chimes that in the original Rosalie Flanagan letter of 2012, thanking Paul for his input, it's the phrase ultimately will be compliant, or ultimately be compliant. And that translates to me as being capable of developing further with design input to be compliant. Ultimately, it is at a point in time. And I think that's very important, because at that point we knew it was a design and build, we knew from a construction point of view, knew the role of the STG in terms of the role it was to provide the support. I think that evidence is the acknowledgement that the advice was to see that the design is in a suitably advanced position that is capable of further design development and is prudent to, again, move forward. I've trawled through the sponsor board minutes.
I think I'm loath to.
I'll be 3 minutes if that's agreeable. went through the sponsor board minutes that I believe are on their way to you, and I'm unable to explain why the serious matter noted by Nick in May, July of 13 was not raised at the sponsor board meeting with SNI attendance. I've spoke about Carl's comments in September around the factual correctness. I've spoke about how I see a documentary evidence base where Peter May put in place Paul's attendance with the project steering group members. I'm happy to discuss at length I believe it was mentioned this morning around the transition between Sport NI and DCAL and the reasons behind that, which was on the back of a gateway review. Spoke about the STG report titled June 13, which says to me it was issued in September. The opportunities to attend is one aspect you can pick up with Carl. Again, the file presents to me that Carl certainly put a red flag up when he realised he'd received notes from 5 meetings that had never been issued to him before. I'm happy to take in detail the discussions around what now seem to be a process stroke value for money risk-based discussion. Finally, if I can just say, in respect to the board, apparently the presentation to the board of Sport NI in June 14, which the Stadia Department certainly received only through an FOI, maybe a matter of 2 months ago. There's a common thread where I'm the programme director. I would expect anyone in the team, internally, externally, certainly within an advisory body, if there's serious issues or concerns, that they would come to me and give me my place as programme director. Be that in formal correspondence to me as programme director, copy to whoever else, or indeed that if matters were being raised about projects for which I'm responsible for, at least a copy of the presentation, etc., be issued. Again, I don't think it's appropriate to expect a Stadia team or a director to be aware of matters raised, recorded in another organisation's board and rely on minutes at a subsequent point coming in.
Okay. Thank you.
Very finally, I would just like
flexible.
Good job us on the record.
a couple more minutes and that'll see.
I think it's just that you've spoken for an hour and a quarter.
So, and I assure you, I have children that left at 7 o'clock, so...
well, it's okay. That gives us another couple of hours. That's grand.
No, that's okay. Look, I just want to set the scene. The D&B, as an experienced practitioner, happy to delve into it. The same approach across the project, Ravenhill, Windsor Park, the team that was assembled. We've still work to do in the pre-construction services around Casement Park. The discussion earlier, and I say this because of the D&B, where you need to understand it's perfectly acceptable under a D&B where historically you go back to planning for some minor amendments, and indeed as was a Ravenhill. So this absolute, I know Nick gave comments earlier around it has to be all done, otherwise you're not compliant with planning. Planning fixes the scale, mass, quantum, etc. If you deviate a door width, you know, there's a flexibility of scope before you need to go in for a full resubmission. So again, that's a technical aspect that I'm happy to unpick. I'm also happy to discuss the final aspects of how we see the process of physical design and operational licensing tying in. So I will conclude on that note, Chair, and I thank you for your time and patience.
Thank you. Could I start off with a few questions here and then bring Les in for the first one? So you were with the rugby folk from March 12 to July 13,
Yep.
and then came across to...
No, I was working from July 13 to February 14. I was employed in another project, another very complex project that was successfully secured a very large capital grant from a heritage lottery organisation.
Okay, that was from July 13 to February 14.
That's right.
And when did you come back into the picture then?
From late 14, I started giving part-time assistance given to the department.
So late 14, you came back into the department on...
Well, I came into the department.
Or came into the department. So really all of these things that we're talking about here that you referred to were before your time?
Oh, and that's why I'm very clear. I can talk about during my time.
I understand.
Aside from that, and hopefully that's accepted, Chair.
But if you only came in late 14, we've been talking about a whole lot of issues that were 12, 13 and early 14.
But in my current position,
I understand that you have to...
I'm responsible, and this is the information that my team has to assemble.
Could you just, for the sake of record, we're trying to put together a timeline of who was in, because people come and go and it's quite movable. If you could just give us the...
We'll undertake that action because I appreciate...
And just could ask then, Mr Dadley there, are you the replacement for Carl Southern?
Yes.
Oh, that's grand, thank you. Next point there was just in regard to the Sport NI board, and that was one of the last points that came up there, the discussion at that meeting and where the Sport NI folk, as would be appropriate, send the minutes of their meetings on to the parent department. And you're saying that you didn't get those. The meeting was 23rd of June 14. Yeah, which for your time, obviously. But you're saying that you only...
No, I think it was June 14 from memory.
Sorry, yes, June 14. You only came in late 14?
February 14 on a part-time, building up, and then in August.
Well, February 14 part-time, and then
August
full-time from late 14. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the first you saw of the minutes of the Sport NI board meeting was?
Through an FOI request where SNI issued them to the stadium team. The point, and I accept it's a separate discussion around how the department is structured, etc. My point is, if the tone and content of the presentation was so significant, and it's not appropriate in my personal view and in my world of project delivery to rely on someone picking up from a set of minutes after the event that they'll recognise a serious issue.
I would just point out, though, that, and we haven't got to the bottom of this yet, there are various mechanisms within the system for an arm's length body to identify issues with the parent department. It could be through the accountability meetings with the chief executive of the arm's length body. It could be, in this case, even through some of the sponsor board meetings. There would be an opportunity there because Sport NI was involved. A whole series of ways, but certainly that issue of 40, we need to find out when they sent on their minutes, as they're required to do, who took them, what did they do with them, did they not see the significance of it? That's important. You mentioned also then, you were with us on the, and I'm sure you picked this up from earlier on, if you're watching as you were, the earlier discussion today. You were with us in December, and then on the 29th of January, I think it was the 11th of December. Why did you not mention at any time the STG concerns and the STG advice?
This is back to when does a risk become an issue? If I was sitting in December with having been informed by the respective parties, or chair of the STG, that we had such an alleged showstopper, I would have factored that in. My career has been built on successful project delivery. I don't set out to start a project that
So at that point you were not aware of the scale of the issue?
As unveiled on the 30th of April, absolutely.
Yeah. I'll take Leslie Cray as the first person then, thank you.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you very much for that. It's good to have it all on record, as I say. I'll go over it again. On the 12th of December 2014, technical discussion notes from both Northern Ireland here, a matter of concerns re emergency exiting, with Rory Miskelly arguing that this could be dealt with during construction. I find that hard just quite to understand.
Yeah, the date of that?
12th of December 2014.
Yeah. I will come to that if you give me 1 second. I'd just like to set the context of that meeting. Well, firstly, I refute the word argue. I like to think I engage.
Just for my own benefit, that's a reference to what paper is this?
The,
Tab 22 now.
Tab 22, thank you.
Can I ask, was that the sole reference to the output of that meeting, or is that the sole context?
Well, that's the one I'm asking the question on.
Yes. Well, at that meeting, what was discussed between Decal and Sport and I, the core aspect that included, and I can only agree by the notes of actions that came out of it, the meeting, was to circulate terms of reference, giving clarity to the role of the STG and the role of officers, to provide confirmation of minutes of a recent STG meeting to Decal, to provide a formal list of STG meetings in 2015, to schedule pre-meetings of the STG with Decal and the SNI officers, for SNI to consider the alternative, the restructuring of the STG itself, with a specific note around allowing the current chair to provide fair and impartial technical advice, and an STG meeting to be held as soon as possible to consider any new material to be provided by the contractor. So that's the context of that. In terms of where, I'm sorry, I forget the phrase that was cited.
Well, there was Antoinette McCone and Nick Harkness, and quite a few were at this.
Yep.
There were 2 bullet points. This one deals the one I'm asking you about. Technical discussion developed on the matter of concerns re emergency exiting. Rory and Skelly arguing that this could be dealt with during construction.
Right. I would suggest you're reading from something I don't have and hasn't been issued to me, so I'm unclear of the document. The only output I have from that is a note of the agreed actions that was circulated between SNI and
So you're unaware of
ourselves.
that? That's a pity, because that would be a fundamental question. How could it be done during construction?
I'm happy. Well, the first thing is, as you can see from all those other actions, the topic of where we are and what do we need to do was discussed. But arguing on where it's presented that I argued the technicalities of it can be done and the inference being at a later date.
Construction is quite specific.
Well,
How
again,
could you, if you didn't know the flow rates, if it were too narrow, if you went for certification and you were told 38, sorry, friend, read for how could you do that?
I don't think, at that meeting was Cynthia Smith, Fergus Devitt, myself, 3 representatives from Sport and I. That was not a technical meeting, so I would not have been arguing around the
Okay, so you deny it
status.
then.
What sort of meeting was it?
It was a meeting, much as I've said, that was to take stock on what do we need to do in terms of moving forward.
This here was to discuss claims made by Sport NI staff. What was that? Would that mean?
I can only go from the agreed actions. There is 2 points in a note that certainly does allude to a potential HR issue that I don't want to talk about and don't think would be appropriate. The other 6 points are very factual around the STG. And
Sorry,
going-
Chair, I think that's the meeting that I had asked previously about in relation to minutes being available, and I was told that there were no minutes.
There were no minutes of the meeting,
You
is that
remember
correct?
that?
Yeah.
Myself and Cynthia Smith.
And,
that
and,
day.
and these aren't minutes, these, as Cynthia said, notes of
Action
actions.
points, so, yeah.
Yeah, so just for
Do you
clarity.
normally go to meetings, Roy, and not take a note of the meeting?
This was not phrased as a, this was a, you know, we want to come in and have a constructive discussion in terms of,
But no, I'm just,
Decal didn't want minutes.
personal experience would be if I go to meet someone or they come in to see me, I usually have a pad in front of me and jot down a few notes. Probably lose them, mind, but I do actually. Somebody has seen my room. But the point is, you do actually take a few notes. Did you take any notes of the meeting?
I would have to check, to be honest. I would say at that time, on the knife edge of a JR session, you know, it was a culture of what do we need to do to get ready to move forward. So I had no reason to believe it was intended to be a needed detailed note copious taking.
Chair, if I could move on, maybe, perhaps. There were several issues outstanding, obviously, when the issue went for planning permission. One of those, I presume, that doesn't exist yet, was the emergency exiting plan. What other issues were outstanding when it went for planning? if any? There may not have been none.
Well, I think it's not. I wouldn't agree that the emergency exiting planning was outstanding when planning was submitted. That has been a subject of earlier discussion, and again,
Was there a complete, sorry, just to follow on that, was there a complete exiting plan?
Is there a plan?
Was there a final exiting plan or a complete one?
an exiting plan or an emergency exiting
Emergency exiting
Right.
plan. So that's what we're talking about.
to accompany the planning submission? No. Was it required? No.
No,
So
but-
I think that's important, again, set in the context of where we were at planning.
Yes.
Was it prudent to submit the planning application? And I think that's why again, before my time, the documents as present, that email that I read out showing the view of the chair of the STG on the day of planning submission is materially relevant.
We'll come back to that again because I think we might want to interrogate that a bit more. But you submitted the plan. The plans were submitted on the 19th of June 2013.
Yeah.
Do we have a final emergency exiting plan as of today?
No.
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 As
Okay.
at today, suffice to say, the scheme has underwent a few significant events, stock
So
taking,
there never
etc.
was one.
No, there
No,
hasn't been.
I don't think that's right, Chair.
Well-
The components of the emergency exiting plan culminate in a document that says, and goes into the safety event management plan saying, in the event, here's what you'll do. The front end work to inform those decisions and code compliance, I tried to make clear earlier the evidence base for the work that was done on that. So in terms of the drawings showing potential routes, in terms of the crowd modelling work, all based on assumptions. Again, the evidence of the engagement of the STG that can you now model it on this scenario? There's correspondence around confusion where the police said, can you model it on the road being closed from a roundabout to here or just one part of the road, etc. So, and that's, again, what I'm very happy to make apparent to the chair. So it's the process that started, and I'll let, certainly through the PAR, determine where we were in that process. Was it appropriate? And was there a fundamental risk to the project, successful project delivery, given that point in time?
Chair, two other quick points. How important was the 38,000 capacity to the project?
Again, I'll speak for the facts. No, I always say you don't invest public money in a project for example, in Titanic. We didn't invest that money just for the anniversary. Right? Yes, you capitalise on the anniversary, but the key reason that underpins the investment is the benefits realisation. The business plan itself for the Casement Park it was something like a once-a-year event at full capacity. So the core benefits to be realised through that project aren't about the 38,000 attendants. It's about meeting the strategic needs of the GAA. Certainly the 38 had been identified at that point in time as a relevant material number. So the motive weighed, the challenge and the key point that, certainly for the department and as a director delivering a programme is the investment still capable of delivering the benefits for which the money was pledged? And that's what I consistently come back to. So in due course, we will see what the final maximum capacity for the major events.
But the numbers would be geared, would they not, to the size and the exiting? It would be,
At that point in time, absolutely.
Okay, very quickly, the Stadium Sponsor Board is 15-16, Chair. In April 14. From the minutes it states, emergency evacuation plan to be further developed to meet GAA's need for a new capacity stadium. Are you aware of that?
I don't have the minutes in front of me, but sorry, what
It's really talking about the emergency evacuation plan, they call it.
yeah, sorry, what meeting?
Stadium Sponsor Board,
Yes, in
April 14.
April 14, thank you.
Emergency evacuation plan to be further developed to meet GAA's need for a new capacity stadium. Did you have to change there?
Sorry?
You have to change new capacity. Or was it all, I know it wasn't all.
No, it was the brief to the design team was procured to design and take forward a 38,000. The contractor was procured to take a maximum capacity of 38,000. The word new, I think it's new as in it's the new redeveloped Casement Park as opposed to
Redeveloped then, it should have been. Okay, well, the other point I would ask you is at table 20, Chair, the GAA to provide decal with emergency exit plans.
See, in retrospect, yeah, the wording's probably clumsy. The key question is, does that mean at that point in time we would have envisaged a full emergency exit plan? And the answer is no, because as I've noted earlier, the input required from the blue light services, etc., it's just too far in front. Now, the question is the design capable of ultimately aligning to it? And that's the question at hand, and again, the power will help clarify that. So perhaps the wording is clumsy, but
It was the GAA to present these plans.
I think the reality of that is the design work and the ongoing work by the GAA team, and I say that from the point of view of the project team members, the designers and the contractors, designers. So I've said there were, for the like of exactly in that period between May and November 14, there was work going on around crowd modelling, scenario planning. That note captured in October from memory, is urging that we look forward to the output of that being concluded or crystallised.
Does it not seem unfair that the GAA was expected to produce the plan? Surely they wouldn't have the experience.
I think, again, I come back to it's the GAA who have engaged the designers and the contractor. It's that piece of work as opposed to...
It should be.
It's a combination. Because at that point, because of a design and build contract, you have the contractor specialists that have taken the client's design and the TENOS, etc., that I've spoke about. They're the core parties. So it should have said the respective parties engaged by GAA. I accept.
When will we have an emergency exiting plan?
Can I break that down into two parts?
I'm sure you will.
I'll treat that as a vote of confidence. Thank you, Leslie. We will need to conclude the design aspect, the bricks and mortar, and which will be based on concluding the emergency evacuation modelling. Clearly that needs input from the STG and the blue light services. So the designers, whether the clients or the contractors, need to conclude that piece of work. And then the final plan that goes into the manual needs the blue light operational response done. So the first bit I can...
Sorry, couldn't hear anything.
Press the wrong button.
The conclusion of the first bit really ties into the timeline going forward. Absolutely clear that given this is a perceived issue or risk, it'll be a key issue going forward. So
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Gordon Dunn.
Thanks, Chair. Just quickly there, following on from that, you said a perceived risk. What are you talking about? Was a perceived risk? The emergency?
This 30th of April Hillsborough statement.
So it's a perceived risk?
No, the member asked me around comments originating back from October, which, as I've explained, was clearly before any the 30th of April events. Given the profile of this, given the fact there's a Cal inquiry, given the fact the Minister's undertaken a separate independent technical review, etc., I welcome those. My focus is on, again, keeping focus on moving forward. So I don't mean to, I mean that by lessening, I don't seek to lessen or trivialise the matter. It's a key issue from a media point of view, from a focus from a Cal. Over the last week, suffice to say, significant resource has gone into this matter and will clearly going forward. So, but it would be wrong for me to say it was a factual risk or issue until this process concludes.
We've obviously heard a lot today about your experience in project management, and we don't doubt it. We haven't heard that. We obviously now would expect a clear way forward for moving the project on to the next step. I take it there will be new plans developed and designed and so on brought forward.
Yes.
In hindsight of what we've we have learned, and I'm sure you have picked up on, if you're still in the position that you are at the moment, will you be proceeding through the same procedures, or would you ensure that the STG are involved with the project right through, and that prior to submitting a new planning application, will you give us assurance that the STG will be fully engaged? I must say I'm disappointed how little you've mentioned the STG. All you've tried to do is rebuff any evidence that they've given us, but you haven't given us any assurance of their engagement, or little or no assurance that they were ever really involved. And I must say, I find it most disappointing how the STG have been treated in relation to all of this whole project. They've been left on the side, brought in occasionally on and off when it suits people, and when it doesn't suit, they were left out of it and excluded.
Just through the chair, if I can respond again, I tried to make it clear. I can speak from my engagement during the process. The rest is from what the file presents. My personal dialogue with Paul Scott is evidenced from December, January, February, March, including with Nick Harkness. When we...
February 14, you said you were part-time doing it? February 14. I say it from evidence right up to February, March of this year. Yeah.
And so certainly more than happy to, but it should be recognised that I'm more than happy to produce a timeline showing the engagement, because I think it's an interesting point where the like of the information around there's schedules of meetings, etc., that have happened throughout the 14 period. I am more than happy to bring them clarity. So I'm confused on the I'm confused on the question. I don't believe. I actually believe that the fact that Paul engaged directly with individuals, that individuals were sent information, reflects that there was professional respect between the specialists. That isn't my field. So I certainly, and that was never the intention, that the programme director would be the gatekeeper, for want of a better word. Sport and I and Nick would openly say at times I need latitude and freedom to explore options and have discussions internally in a free, impartial arena. So I'm happy to.
If you're rerunning the project again, which God willing will happen, will you give us assurance that you would fully engage with the STG?
I will, and I'll tell you why. Because what we'll be seeking is to have absolute clarity and transparency and efficiency in communication over what's in the existing legal agreements, which includes advisory body sign-off, etc. I've tried to share today just some of the facts from the, appreciate you got a bundle citing some facts. I've went through the files, shared other facts. In terms of going forward, suffice to say, every T dotted and I crossed.
And would that lead to sign-off of the STG off the plans prior to submission for planning approval?
Again, as per the original intent, sign off that the plans are suitably developed at that point in time, and it's prudent to put in for planning, and they're capable of being further developed at the right time by the right people, and ultimately culminating in obtaining a licence.
That's not exactly what I'm saying. We were told today clearly that the STG had not signed off the plans, the drawings, the plans, prior to submission to the planning service. Now, in future, would you give us assurance that that will not happen if you're in post?
And I thank you for the confidence. The phrase sign off, clearly at the time, as the file presents, the acknowledgement in the email exchange was sufficient to generate the confidence between the project architect and the chair of the STG. And it should be noted that these two professional people previously worked together for a long time within Sport NI. There was mutual respect, trust and understanding. So certainly in terms of what format that documentation will take going forward, I would give an undertaking that will be very clearly spelt out that, again, the design is at an appropriate stage.
But it is appropriate, sorry. When is the appropriate stage? Surely to the ordinary man on the street who goes to the planning service to get his house built, he gets the house designed right through and then forwards his planning application, a complete design. Now, why is it different? Why is it different? I know you're going through the whole design and build process, which to me is a very loose procedure. It lacks real management, and I think that's a big risk. I really do think that's a big risk.
I would agree the design and build allows, and it's clearly putting to tie down the fundamentals. So I would agree, and a key focus will be making sure that the fundamentals are locked down and protected. To use the analogy that the door is the right width, but we don't know what colour the door will be painted, we'll sort that out down the line. So that appropriate balance, I understand that, and I'll reflect.
But with due respect, I mean it, that was not the case here. You know, the building could have been built to a specification that would have needed major change, including amending the planning application.
Yeah.
Is that true? It could have happened.
That is a hypothetical question.
No, it's not.
On a series of events. What I would through the chair.
You had full planning permission.
Sorry?
You had full planning permission.
Yes.
You had full planning permission to proceed to build. So that building could have gone and been constructed and would not have been compliant with the requirements of this final safety certificate. Is that a risk? Do you accept that that could have been is a real risk?
That's a risk. It's the question is what scale was the risk, and that's where I welcome the power that'll highlight.
I think you don't grasp the significance of that risk.
Sorry, through the chair, on every project culminating to the day and hour of opening, the last inspection, say by the fire brigade, etc. That's a key risk. 2 days before opening, they turn up to an inspection and say you have to do X, Y, and Z. The question at hand.
They'd be part of the STG, though. No, fire.
I speak around general project delivery, which
right.
So again, the department recognised and brought them on board through the STG at an early stage. So if, and this is why the relevance of full build only as a procurement choice, the context of that's relevant. Because if the answer is design everything to the nth degree, takes 6 years to design it in a rising market, produce documentations right down to the nth degree, and then have a contractor and build only, that's back to the fundamental procurement strategy. What we need to understand through the power is, were we disproportionately at the wrong place and time with the design at that stage?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Just before David comes in there, picking up on the point there that you said in relation to Gordon, some people then transferred. When the thing was handed over to from Sporting Eye to Decal, did some people move across at that point?
Yes, that's factual.
Who would have moved across?
My understanding would be that the output of it was a programme Gateway Reviews. My understanding, they informed a decision to for the department to appoint a project director and establish the capital team. The individuals that I understand come down from Sporting Eye or Tubate or whatever the exact technology was the who became the programme manager, Kieran McGurk.
Right,
Carl Southern, the departmental.
So they were Kieran McGurk and Carl Southern were both in Sporting Eye.
Yes.
I wasn't aware of that.
And along with two other staff officers and an EO officer.
Okay.
So I say that I believe it's relevant in terms of their background, their working relationship, and albeit they're working out of a different building with a different letterhead.
Sure. It's just to get a thanks, David.
All right, but those people are gone. How many of the 5 people are still in?
Out of, apologies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 are still in the team now. So the 2 that have left are Kieran and Carl.
Cheers, thank you. Thanks, Chair. It's getting a wee bit like your office down here with the amount of paperwork and whatnot and stuff, but it really does remind me of the story with the hand grenade with the pin taken out as far as Decal are concerned. It keeps getting passed on and juggled about. It's more, it gives us great examples of all the technical side of it and your experience, personal experience, and that's all very grand, Rory, but at the end of the day, as far as this committee is concerned, it's the openness of the process and what we should have known and what we weren't told. What Say again, you didn't know a terrible lot until the 30th of April.
Excuse me.
What did you know prior to that, to be honest? Because that's what maybe helped matters.
I come back to, from a factual position, you know, if it was such a serious issue, I would welcome the evidence of where either through sponsor board, correspondence with myself, or whatever that was given to me. I have absolutely no interest from my profession in being involved in a job that has a risk of project failure.
Who would feed information through to you at your level from the likes of STG minutes where it's advised that the emergency action figures are significantly below the 38,000, that would require redesign? They advised that decal of the department, the parent department in Sport NI, important that he be advised of the magnitude of the shortfall, also around 14. You know, there's language there. People must have picked up on it, maybe passed on to you or whatever. Did nobody bring that forward at all?
Sorry, the 14, when was that mentioned? Or can I just ask what document?
No, it's just before you had started, probably in around January 14.
And is that notes of a meeting?
STG.
So again, that's notes held by an individual, not minutes. I would expect
Sorry,
no
it's a minute, sorry.
minutes.
Those minutes.
There was an attendance
Oh.
record and
Yeah, yeah.
apologies,
But
introduction.
again, the context of that, on the basis is design development and by the chair's own admission, once you solve a technical problem, that drawing becomes obsolete and you move on. So you had that process ongoing. From a process, the key question here is, was it over and above the norm level of design development and where it was at? And if it was it escalated? And if so, how? So I'll very clearly say, until the 30th of April, the perceived scale of the challenge at that time had not been communicated to me.
Right, well, you did refer to a populist letter to the GA on the 7th of April. And the middle paragraph's probably the most important. The constraints of the site dictate that it is not feasible to provide a zone for 4/5 within the site as described by the Green Guides. The proposal has therefore been developed to make use of the Andersonstown Road. Andersonstown Road frontage is used as the entrance and prime exit point, and as such will need to be closed to traffic as such and safeguarding point beyond perimeter of the. If there was an incident on the Andersonstown Road, did that not flag up then in April 14? If the Andersonstown Road had a serious incident on it, where were the people going to go?
All that I'd expect is that, and again, the STG is a logical vehicle to do it because of the blue light services, that a risk-based approach is taken to it, and the design team responds to the broad consensus of the STG that if it's reasonable, the STG and the blue light services agree there's the probability, etc., and impact of X, Y, and Z, and that's what part of the modelling work reflects.
That's the cat out of the bag. If Andersonstown Road's not available, you have a major problem.
And through the chair, if I can just come back, if two of the major entrance points at Ravenhill are lost, where are we? There's a risk-based approach to it.
I would hope the emergency exiting plan will take that into consideration.
And again, through the power, we'll see the process that was taken. I come back to.
No, you're another red herring in there, to be honest.
No, it's not
We're
a
talking
red.
about casement here.
Well, okay, let's stick to casement.
Yeah.
Is it prudent then?
Andersonstown Road's closed. There's an alert on it. There's a problem that people can't use it. That paragraph has let the cat out of the bag.
Well, the true question there is, if we were sitting with an absolutely under no circumstances could the Andersonstown Road be closed. I understand the previous management plan there was an agreement to close it 15 minutes before the game and after it. 2 years ago, and I'll come back to Casement, we didn't close Mount Marion at Ravenhill. We do now. So again, that's the importance that work needs to be seen through and developed in conjunction with the blue light services.
That's for ordinary exit, and that's not emergency stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't. It's
But how much was the planning application? Just moving on now.
I
Costly.
understand the planning application fee was circa 80-odd thousand.
82.
82. Okay, and then. Well, I'll wait till some others have their go there. But.
I think Basil McRae.
Thank you. You raised a report,
Time is tea time.
Casement Park Belfast emergency evacuation time calculations. The report that you said there's only one page of. Can you tell me what it says about in 316 about, on the basis of the above considerations, the impact on the emergency action is presented for 6 conditions. What does it say for the first condition?
That's the output. Again, clear that the committee have that, as Paul provided, is the one page that shows the cascading effect of losing increasing numbers of exits.
So if we just take the North Stand, what does it say?
North Stand, all exits unavailable, 29 minutes.
Could I just...
Yeah, sorry, I'll look.
In context, that information was issued, and I think on that same page or in other parts of that document, those are pure calculations offered to the STG to carry on the discussion about developing the event management plan in line with the services. So they are calculated from.
What does it say? I'm glad, Mr. Dudley, that you've interjected there. What does the either the green or the red book say with regard to the time available for emergency exit?
Well, the red and green guide refer to, on the majority of time, refer to emergency exit as fire. Nearly all of what it relates to is in fire circumstances. And it also makes it clear in modern stadiums, quite often no exits are discounted in the sense of fire. And in those circumstances, people need to be out within 8 minutes.
What does it actually say, though? What is the guidance? I mean, you are an expert. You'll be able to tell me. I mean, I can hand you the piece of paper over here, but I presume that you're able to tell me that it's not just up to 8 minutes. What is the, because 8 minutes is for normal. What does it actually say?
I couldn't tell you exactly what the guide says word for word here, but my understanding of the guide is, as I said, for it's to be at a place of relative safety, and that's not outside the ground, a place of relative safety within 8 minutes. It also goes on to talk about that emergency scenarios are to be developed, and in some circumstances, and it's all dependent on the actual stadium in its location, how many exits will be discounted, and that's for a group, including the blue light services, to agree on. It's also it's for that collective group to decide on how escape times. It's for them.
So let me just come to it. It's 9.7 egress time, right? It is emphasised that there is a difference between egress time and emergency evacuation time.
What page is this on?
This is actually, I'm on page 16 of Paul Scott's papers.
Oh, right, okay.
But I'm quoting from the Red Book, the Northern Ireland Guide, right? And it says there is a difference between egress time, which is normal, and there is between emergency time. And it states, when it comes to the emergency evacuation time, it says the maximum emergency evacuation time for sports grounds varies between 2.5 minutes and 8 minutes. 8 minutes is at the very top. Now, you have presented, or you have acknowledged that there are papers in here that are 29 minutes, 13 minutes, 10 minutes, 9 minutes, 9 minutes. Only the bottom one actually exists.
I need to be clear. This report, again, which is a report, a snapshot in time, responding to a what-if scenario. So there's a what-if scenario, and more to the point, the report clearly says later on that they've made absolutely no allowance for phased evacuation or use of the pitch. That is a separate source of discussion, and I Chair, would feel more comfortable that the technical members of the project team come, as I'm sure they're scheduled to do, to talk through in detail.
Well, let me tell you, I'm not a technical member. But even I can read a report that says 29 minutes. Let me tell you, there is not a cat in hell's chance of you getting 38,000 people out of that stadium if the Andersonstown Road entrances and exits are not available. It is not possible. I'm telling you, I'm not an expert, but I'm prepared to go on the record.
And through the Chair, that's where I would come back to say a working document that responded to a what-if scenario. The focus should then turn into the risk-based approach by the respective experts and the blue light services around. For example, if we had a shopping centre and 4 of the 5 exits were closed off because of bomb scares, you know, the exit, etc., what is the risk-based approach to it? We haven't concluded that piece of work.
And I'm telling you, you've taken almost a year and a half to go through this. You have not come up with an emergency plan. You took an hour and a half, Mr. Muskelly, to talk us through this, and I don't think you really addressed the issue. You asked for evidence. I happen to turn over here on the next page, just for people that are mentioned. It is 196 to 197. It happens to be a letter from Sport NI Chief Executive Antoinette McKeown to the GAA, and it talks at some length about the SDG. You had, and they want to see if we can do away with the issue on the Andersonstown Road. Let me read.
Am I copied in? Is the department copied into that correspondence?
Well, you see, I don't know, but earlier on, I think part of the evidence.
If I just say, if I'm at the right thing, they are. It says here from Antoinette McKeown to Peter May. Is that the one?
Sorry, from.
That's 197.
What page is this?
I'm on 196.
Sorry, I'm on the wrong.
196, 197. But I am told.
He's in Paul Scott's.
Yes, in Paul Scott's.
Right, okay.
So this is a letter dated the 26th of November, and I am told that part of our thing was that you would expect this issue to be brought up at the sponsor board meeting because Antoinette was on it. But I will quote you some of the issues that are raised to the GAA. This is to the GAA, you raised a concern that the STG had changed its position in relation to the removal of the Andersonstown Road from the emergency evacuation arrangements. And I, Antoinette, had undertaken to review this and confirm if and why the STG had changed its view. She says, I can now confirm that the STG had early concerns regarding the potential for an incident on the Andersonstown Road to have a negative impact, given the unique exiting arrangements and whatever. And it says that this was the subject of formal communications with DCAL in February and March 2013, and these communications reference further discussions. She goes on, and when it comes to this, and I asked the Permanent Secretary this, there is a list of sponsor board meetings where the emergency evacuation plan was on the plan and did not materialise anything.
Can I respond maybe to the Chair? I've tried to set the scene around the ongoing development of it by both the physicality of the design and the long-term management operations. I cannot respond or answer why there was direct correspondence from Sport NI outside of the STG to the GAA without the department or myself or my predecessor being copied in. I cannot answer that.
So let me go back and say you've
sorry,
started this.
if I can just finish through the Chair.
Well, I've taken that point and I'm now moving on to questions because
It's a second point.
Sorry, just
And secondly, I cannot comment as to why, through the sponsor board minutes, such a serious matter, and the minutes will speak for themselves. They're being made available. I cannot explain why, on one hand, such a letter being written, to which we're not party to, and with the structures we put in place to de-escalate significant issues, that forum wasn't used.
Well, you see, I asked the Permanent Secretary if he had been listening to Mr Harkness's submission, and he said he had. And I asked him, did he agree with the majority of it? And he said he did. And I asked him, I said, if he had known about the concern of Sport NI, would he have done something about it? And he said he would.
Yeah.
And what he actually said is, he didn't know. And yet there's clearly evidence coming out to this. And my biggest concern with what you've said is, this is all about trying to protect, we didn't know, or I wasn't told, or this wasn't this. The truth of the matter is, we could have built a stadium. We could have built a stadium that we could not have got a certificate for the same capacity we built it for. That could have happened.
I think the truth is, through the committee, and I welcome it, is to find out what was communicated and when and why, and who it wasn't communicated to.
Does the department get approval? Does the department give approval before designs go through for planning permission?
The department, the technical process in project delivery, in that the department would acknowledge and accept that a certain milestones and gates, acceptance of a design or approval of a design in construction delivery infers responsibility for the design. So the responsibility for design is never transferred from the designers.
Does the department give approval before a design goes to planning?
The department would check to see whether the respective gates have been met. And in that particular respect, that's why the position of the STG prior to planning, and that's why that email of 19th of June is in my mind, sets the scene. I have to say, just through the chair, there's a lot of this is referred to here, this is referred to. Where is the fundamental, this is a potential showstopper? Where is the fundamental, this thing will never be capable of delivering a fraction of the benefits realised? And the answer is, I have not, from a documentary point of view, that has not been found.
So can you tell me, because you're an employee of the department, does the department give formal approval before a design goes to planning?
The planning is submitted by the applicant, who's the Ulster Council of the GAA. We make it a condition of funding that to protect funding eligibility, they must do X, Y, and Z.
So do you give formal approval?
In respect of?
I have a letter from the previous permanent secretary that says the department approves this design to go forward for planning. That's the quote I'm taking out. Yes. This is a letter. So does the department do that? You've given me a long CV about all of the projects that you've been involved in, all of the issues. Is this a condition?
It's a condition of grant eligibility that the X, Y, and Z have been met. The department were clearly satisfied that from the position of the STG, there was nothing to materially not submit the planning application.
I'm sorry, I asked the permanent secretary this, and I want to just get...
Just one more question, is that?
Okay, I'll take that, okay. So, when it comes to this statement from the permanent secretary, it says, it is essential that when the department approves this design to go forward for planning, we have confirmation from SNIOB, the PSNI, Belfast City Council, that all relevant and reasonable foreseeable safety scenarios have been considered and anticipated with the design, and importantly, that the overall physical design is capable of achieving full spectator capacity within future venue certification. So this is a statement by the Permanent Secretary before authorisation to go forward for planning is concerned. Do you agree with that statement?
I agree with those are the exact parameters.
So was it done?
I can only speak about what I found in the files.
And what did you find in the files?
I found the email confirmation from the chair of the STG on the 19th of June, the day the planning was in, that there was no material concern that would prevent planning being submitted.
So, just concluding this point, that what you're telling us is there's no cause for concern.
No.
This is absolutely fine, that you can see nothing of any worry in this bit here. Is this what your statement is? That he said it's okay and you're saying it's fine?
No, there's a difference between what I've tried to respond to is the concerns raised on the 30th. In retrospect, should that have been issued as a certificate countersigned by all parties, etc.? In retrospect, looking back, that's for material consideration going forward. I agree it relied on an assessment of the status at the time between the working parties, etc. The question was there any underlying evidence of an underlying issue? That's the material. In terms of the formal sign-off and the process and there's the documentary evidence, I take the member's point in terms of going forward, and that's why my earlier comment around I's dotted and T's crossed will be borne in mind.
Could I just take a point there that was raised, and that was in your answer to Mr McCrae about the letter from Antoinette McKeown to the GAA. The two projects you've been working on, well, we'll park the issues around Ravenhill, but obviously there was still ongoing work around Windsor and then Casement. So there's two big projects that are the focus of what you're doing, and the GAA is one of the big partners. It is the big partner in the case of Casement. If they got a letter from Antoinette McKeown, would they have talked to you ever about that? Or did they keep that to themselves?
I was aware, and I don't want to get into the detail of GA have a long-standing relationship with Sport NI. The interface outside of Casement Park has day-to-day dealings in terms of the safety advisory group, in terms of ongoing licensing at over another 15 or so designated venues.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm just asking there, but on this particular point, this was a letter, from what I can see of it, around Casement Park. That's the title, on Casement Park project. So the GA get a letter from Sport NI, big title, Casement Park project. Did they ever mention that letter to you?
certainly, as at the time of that letter, or within a period after it, it was not.
How long ago would you have first come across that letter?
What was the date of the letter?
November 20.
November
Of the
14.
letter is the 26th of November 2014.
Which is in the final throes of the JR determination. I'm sure comments around we received correspondence on a number of matters, but in respect of we received project related, that's not my
So
recollection.
you hadn't seen that letter
I hadn't seen
in the
that.
last day or so?
Until I think in the last month through the CAL, etc. I'll undertake to factually check what we received and when, and that's all I can do if that's agreeable.
The Councillor Hushin.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Rory and Andrew. Very comprehensive. We're in here 2 hours already. Report, and I suppose it's a challenge, certainly, some of the evidence that this committee has heard to date. They've not dismissed some of it. But I am interested, just because there's been a lot of emphasis here on the role and responsibilities and importance of STG, and because of your role, particularly in Ravenhill or Kingspan, as I know, that actually received plan before the STG was even constituted. Was there anything within that? And I have to say, I've been in Ravenhill, and it's an absolutely excellent stadium. I toured of it there recently, and it was. But was there anything in that when the STG was constituted, it came back and looked and said, "Well, hold on, this needs rectifying, that needs righting." And you point out about the Mount Marion and Ravenhill exits, and I know that even in recent times they've changed. There was an experiment on a one-way system and stuff like that, which would improve exiting from Ravenhill. So was there anything that anybody came back to you subsequently? Because this is in terms of safety and what have you, it is an organic development that is based on situations and based on even experience, actually.
That interaction carried on through the build period of Ravenhill, culminating with I remember physical checks and measurements being made 3 days before the big quarter-final home match. So the ongoing interaction with the STG during the construction period is a fact. That answers the question in Ravenhill.
Okay, and see in terms of a stadium development, like, you know, I'm thinking, say, is there in terms of capacity, would there perhaps be a degree of future-proofing put into any stadium design in terms of thinking ahead that perhaps the promotion or something else that attendance and whatnot would soar, and that would be accounted for within any plan?
Ravenhill's a very good example of future-proofing, where not only in terms of the higher level of code over and above the funding agreement at the time, in terms of the early stages of the inclusive stadia advisory group, where emergent best thought was brought into a lot of practical areas around to be an excellent model, well over and above code from a disability and accessibility in terms of everything. In terms of the future-proofing, absolutely. And this comes back to the design and build process, where the constant, and sometimes the contractor is best placed to bring this to the table, where the constant, if we put a bit of precast in there now, we know it's not in the original plans, but it'll be easier at a future date to go back and turn that into a storeroom. That's an incumbent. I treat that as an incumbent on construction and design professionals, because that's what gets best value for money.
And would there be any safety aspects that could be future-proofed in terms of the design?
In terms of Ravenhill,
Well, in terms of any stadium.
look, absolutely, it's best practice, and you've statutory compliance, you've best practice, and you've emergent changes. No one wants to invest a large sum of capital and then find out in 5 years' time a change in the legislation is coming down the road. That's why Ravenhill has built in a number of things that'll see it, and that's the best use, because at the end of the day, from a financial performance point of view, no one wants spikes, no one wants big asks in 7 years' time. So, maximise, get as much of the top bar over and above basic code compliance that you can through the capital investment, and it leaves the long-term costs and use as a relatively flat operating cost.
Just say as well, that was the fundamental reason for introducing the Green Guide as well, because it was ahead of the Red Guide.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And
It's a bit like sorry if I can just use the analogy. It's a bit like the building control requirements. Building control says 4 inches insulation. That's the minimum. The building controls are the minimum. If as a house owner I say I want to put 6 inches in because long term I'll have better heating bills. So it's the same approach.
yeah, and obviously both red and green guides are updated quite regularly.
It's a good example actually. Specifically in Ravenhill at the time, the higher forthcoming code of 2 years' time at the time became the brief. So it's a bit like the insulation. They could have went for the current regs, but inevitably, why would you do that if you're putting off a risk that down the line either capital ask or you run a risk of you need to spend more money to up the current code, or you get a restriction factor put on you. So that constantly looking to the future, how not only can you get 18,000 on day one, but long term, how do you protect that position?
The location of Ravenhill would be perhaps a tighter position than...
All three are existing proven track records of sports ground. All three have adjacent residential, different scale and mass, similar challenges. But at the end of the day, that's why you assemble the right teams, and projects like that are challenging and rewarding.
Okay, well, so I suppose central to this inquiry has been the sort of relationship or breakdown of relationship between the chair of the STG and others. And I'm glad that you're coming forward with a timeline there of that engagement, although you did give a fairly extensive coverage to that. But the view of the chair of the STG on the date of the submission, that has to be materially relevant to this, because there seems to have been a change of mind between November 14 and certainly the 30th of April.
I can only deal in facts. That's
Do we have that letter?
Sorry?
Do we have that letter?
that'll be in the submission prior to...
Referring to the letter, the whole haven't seen it, that's fine, just to clarify that point.
But the view of the chair is, would it be materially relevant in any consideration?
Well, I've just read it out verbatim.
Right. Well, Ravenhill received planning before the STG was constituted. Where did Windsor lie in that?
Ravenhill received planning. There was ongoing design development, and final minor plan amendments, etc., were subsequently submitted to tidy up, for want of a better word, and the design development. So it comes back to this design and build approach. So that's the experience in Ravenhill. In terms of,
In terms of Windsor, where was it lying? Where was it in terms of the STG being constituted?
I think back to, as the evidence by the Rosalie Flanagan, again, there was STG input and very supportive and acknowledged, and indeed it's a reciprocal arrangement. The good work of the STG has been acknowledged in various documentation.
Right. And Andrew, I was interested in something you said there just about obviously getting people to safety is the first consideration. And we've seen, unfortunately, in the past, in the previous stadia disasters, Ibrox, Highsall, Bradford and even Hillsborough, where the pitch was actually a consideration within that. Is that part of that?
That hits, sorry, I'll let Andrew come in, but that hits the nail on the head for me in terms of, the shutters were pulled down on a process that hadn't yet been completed. If such, and okay, the guys did a model on if you didn't use the pitch, for me as a non-technical, wearing a non-technical hat in respect to the legislation, the relevant experts have to agree some of those fundamental principles. And we've heard one side saying, I don't believe the guide allows the pitch as a place of safety. I would just refer to any forthcoming appearance by the other relevant experts on the matter.
I would agree with that. You could read the guidance, and there's certainly a part of the guidance that says in a new build stadium that potentially the pitch shouldn't be used. But as Rory said,
Shouldn't be used.
Shouldn't be used. But professionals who we're talking to, and other stadiums, but the guide also says that it's a case-by-case basis. And for example, some of the scenarios that have been run out for Casement Park, you would actually, by using the pitch, you would actually exit the stadium in a much quicker time.
Can I just add two things to that? One, that's why I'm looking forward to, under the power, a benchmark evidence-based approach. Yeah. What has every other stadium in the UK done? And secondly, the irony is not lost to me, the Gaelic pitch at 140 metres long is a very expansive piece of ground.
Absolutely.
It's the largest of all three.
And was I not right that after Hillsborough, all the stadia, the conditions of all stadia were reconsidered, and the likes of that pitch side fencing was done away with them?
Maybe, absolutely. I'd also say that I know there's been talk about this. If the stadium is used for a concert, then 15% of those people would be on the pitch listening to the concert, so they would be exiting. So, but as Roy said, that
we need the experts to conclude the exercise and then have a view. And as I say, on a benchmarked evidence-based approach. So it's wrong to speculate anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Mullen?
Yeah, just most of what I was going to ask has been answered there. Right. But getting back to the pitch one, when you say look at the book, which by not using the pitch, is that coming out of the green book or red book?
It's complicated in terms of my understanding in layman's is you can use the pitch if it's a place of safety, which is determined by if people are stationary, there's pressure behind them, etc. I fully understand. So it needs to feed into the wider flow. And that's why the crowd modelling and the flow is so important. I come back to it, we just need to. But, you know, the guidance is there, it's guidance. There's experts in the field that have delivered a vast amount of UK stadiums use green guide and indeed the red guide, so I need them to conclude that.
So
that's just a point where it's a guide, and again, for example, with the Casement Park, because of the nature of the pitch being actually you enter at sort of effectively first floor and then you come down. Whereas if, particularly at the side entrances, if you enter the pitch, it's been described that you can go through the tunnels and then you're straight out the side entrances at street level. So, but
a very blunt analogy for my frame is that it's a guidance document that says get people to a place of safety. Designers and experts assess where you think the best places of safety are on your particular project.
So, interpretation at the minute.
It hasn't been concluded, that technical piece of work.
I'm going back to the presentation of Mr. Scott, who's here, where he at length laboured on the fact that the pitch was not used in the scenario of the time frame for the flow of exit. He was very specific on that, but the pitch was not used, could not be used. Now, what you're telling me now isn't different to what was said there, and this is coming down to the whole crux of this inquiry, because we can wander away from this inquiry a little bit here, you know, and it's got me a little bit confused in the whole thing now.
Absolutely. I want absolute clarity that we're with the STG expertise, paid money to an exemplar worldwide stadium expert and work for the GAA. We have a design and build contractor and their exemplar architects team with, again, exemplar experience. I think they need to come to the committee. They need to share the facts and the opinions in order that the committee reach an informed and balanced view on what the facts are or our position.
Another thing, there is a report in there, we talked about it earlier on, and forgive me for not remembering, no name on it. It wasn't signed or nothing. And we only concluding who. Well,
that's that particular interim STG report by itself, which, and that's just from a factual. When you go through a file, factual things like admin, helps understand.
And just one few may ask observations. Was the word Hillsborough disaster ever mentioned prior to this going into planning application? Whenever we find out now today, on the correspondence you have shown there, that everybody was happy with the application.
Well, I mean, again, the facts speak for themselves. personally, and I know other colleagues are struggling to recollect the word being used before the 30th of April.
That's appalling.
Whether
I think that's appalling.
sorry.
I think it's appalling that you, just because the word is not mentioned, that Hillsborough is not.
Oh, that was the question through the chair.
Sorry,
I don't think it's any defence.
there's a valid point there that we'll come to in a minute. There is a valid point. Let him finish his point and then we'll deal with it. Yeah, rather than
Same
three,
question I asked before, and the word appalling never came into it, and I don't see there should be a difference coming into it. Right? This is where I'm trying to, for my own benefit here, to look at this inquiry, because I'm trying to focus on why this inquiry has been held, not other side parts of it. But why would anybody come out and talk about a Hillsborough type scenario?
I think there comes a point, Oliver, where we've milked the Hillsborough name and the use of the word to death. I think it's been discussed at some length. It's been clear that prior to a certain point the word wasn't used, at a certain point it was used. What alternative words were used prior to that can be looked into, but I think it's time to move on to another question.
Just trying to find out from the,
another question.
I was just trying to find out from the gentleman, from his point of view, was that word ever made?
No, and we're clear on that.
It wasn't made clear.
Yeah.
Not to the best of my recollection.
Okay.
Thank you. Karen McKevitt.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think to say that maybe we shouldn't be mentioning the Hillsborough end, it doesn't help the information that I'm trying to gather out on health and safety. Because when it was raised here by Mr Scott to this committee, we were all horrified. Because 98 people lost their lives in Hillsborough. Absolutely. And the thought that something like that could have happened on our doorstep or anybody else's doorstep over health and safety issues, over red and green book guidance or anything else, it's very important that I'm allowed to be able to ask the questions to anybody that's given evidence to this. So if I mention Hillsborough 10 times, it's because it's been mentioned and we've all been horrified.
And I think it's absolutely important as well, Mr McKevitt, that it's noted that the reason that we're holding this inquiry, which some members of this committee voted against, is because of that very same concern. That concern motivated us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe not motivate everybody, but motivate some of us. Go ahead.
Okay, so, and the fact that there is other inquiries been held alongside this as well, I hope that you're not repeating yourself numerous times. So, but I'm quite keen to get some information from you. Some Mr Hoshin has already raised in and around the perceived planning commission before an STG was set up, and the importance of the STG group and stuff has already been answered by yourself. So thank you, because I've listened to that. But on the Ravenhill end, on health and safety issue, or Windsor for that matter, on health and safety emergency plans, Ravenhill got planning permission before the STG was set up. Was there any guidance given from the Red and Green Book to the Ravenhill emergency exit plan that was introduced after full planning?
Yeah, I think it needs to be clear just that I had no involvement in the early stages of Ravenhill in my role in respect to the department.
Sorry, I thought you said you were.
I was employed. I acted for the project sponsor for IFU directly.
Yes.
So it would be wrong of me to comment sitting here as a decal official what maybe happened whilst I was on the other side of the fence.
I thought you said 2 days prior to, or 3 days prior to Ravenhill been opened, that the health and safety team were going around checking. Maybe
that's correct. That's correct, and that was in March 14.
Was the certificate already?
It was the BCC licence was received at some point in March 14.
So
apologies, I thought your question was around the planning submission stage, which would have been a few years before that.
No, they've already had planning. It's the health and safety issue, because that's what this inquiry is on.
Yes, and the measuring was the final checks around final STG compliance.
Okay.
So I say that the final checks were by Chair of the STG and his staff around physically verifying certain measurements on site.
Okay. The fact that the pitch can't be used, and I'm only a lay person looking in, or from the outside in, if you'd say. So on the Hillsborough disaster, which was described that a potential could have happened, people were prevented from getting onto the pitch. And my looking onto TV and reports into that was that if people had got onto the pitch, maybe a lot more would have been saved because of fencing and stuff. and all. And I am sure, without any shadow of doubt, that a red and green book guidance, which was rewrote several times, probably from the Hillsborough disaster, that was brought into stadium guidance on health and safety. Would you agree with that?
Look, I think the lessons learned and the
But also, again, there would be debate amongst the experts on that. I mean, I reiterate that the Red and Green Guide, when it talks about emergency, generally refers to a fire emergency, and therefore that you should be able to get everybody. There's interpretation, and all people have interpretation of what the Red and Green Guide says, but
I think I just want to be absolutely clear. You know, we're talking the facts. There's a design process, and as I noted earlier, there's the serious body of work to be done in terms of the emergency planning and the procedures and the events, safety officer on the day, etc. All before. So I don't want to perceive that we are not addressing health and safety. We're talking about it from the first stage, as in the design. But I've tried to explain why that is only the first part. There's an overarching narrative right up the operation and on the day, right down to the events on the day, etc. So just to reflect and record those comments, that scenario was fundamentally and it's such a key issue to address on any major capital project, and especially in Stadia. So I just want to reiterate that.
Okay. We have Casement and we have Windsor and we have Ravenhill. The other two, were they based on the Red and Green book, or just the Red book that was indicated earlier on for this part of region?
Under the building contract, Windsor and Casement are required to comply to the moorowner standard of whatever applies, as in the Red and Green Guide. So, it's, as I said in the early stages, certain areas are up, certain areas are down. We're actually striking the highest bar in every section.
So it applies to all three.
Ravenhill contractually, from
maybe it was earlier.
From memory, was earlier. It was only the Red in the building contract. However, the physical facilities built have 98 or 99% been done to Green Guide. So
certainly Windsor Park was done.
Oh, sorry. I want to get that. I asked a question. So Ravenhill has been asked as
over and above the contractual requirements, and it ties in with the future proofing, etc. It was eminently sensible. It was the right thing to do. There was no additional cost.
So it's done in the green?
It's over and above the statutory compliance under the building contract, I believe. So it was by the book, by the letter of the law, Red only. Certain other more onerous conditions of the green were achieved. I think it was the vast majority of the overarching onerous standards. And again, on the basis that Ravenhill was let significantly a year and a half, 2 years in advance, that reflected the status of the programme at the time.
Okay, that's good. So I'm not sure. To you, Mr. What I have, I'm assuming it's the guidance from Sport NI. So I'm referring to that, and it's page 24. And on it, Nick Harness has said that on 2 occasions he hasn't received one where it's the notes of recent presentations of the CAL committee and notes emergent emergency acts concern from the SCG. Very keen to re-engage with the SCT in consideration of new plans, but to you he's got no reply, and that's dated 3rd of February. And the other one then on the 12th of May, where Nick Harkness has an email as well to yourself, Rory, and he was possible re-engagement of the STG and wanted to offer a second opinion on safety matters at Casement Park from the SGSA, UK and world experts, but again he's received no reply. Can I ask why?
Yes, and I tried to address that in but I want to focus specifically on that. If you can just bear with me for one moment until I pull Just one moment, please. Apologies.
No, it's no
This is
problem.
important because I did overhear this, and I need to find a bit of paper. From memory, he cites the 12th of May as one email with the phrase no reply. That exact email, I believe Nick has just factually cited the wrong date, and that there was a response by myself, which is what I'm now going to share. So I'm looking at my correspondence where I wrote to Nick on the 26th of March. I believe, and I responded to Nick, thanks for your recent emails and discussions on a number of matters. Thank you for the information and risk relief. Secondly, thank you again for reinforcing SNI support going forward with STG and related matters. I note the potential for further expert advisory services as per your earlier note.
Sorry, is that your second opinion that you're talking about there, or is that?
That's what Nick cites in an email. My point is, I believe where he cited his original email was the 12th of May. I think it was, factually, it was just earlier, and therefore, and my response is, if you read the chain, is in advance of the question being asked, which it obviously couldn't have been. So I think it's an admin. Again, the papers will very clearly show that, because
It should be, if you look at the actual emails, it's in your pack.
At the back of the packet.
224.
That's your table one.
There is one there which was, there's two 12th of Mays where somebody has forwarded something to somebody print out presumably or something like that.
I think that's the note. I would explain it then.
There's the 3rd of February one, which is the right date, and then the other should be the 23rd of March. I think that, you know.
So,
the 3rd of February one, have you responded to that?
I have a raft of stuff here. All I have here, the 26th of March, I responded in respect of going forward with the STG and the role of the potential second expert advisory service. So whatever email that related to, I believe that answered that email, hopefully promptly. I believe it was only asked a few days before that. I think it is a case of that someone forwarded on after the event. In respect, there was other emails, 14th of April to Nick. Many thanks for our recent meetings and discussions, all of which have been aimed at our joint approach, etc. There was emails to Paul during February, March. So I'm hard to. I think a lot of them were similar, around meeting up, etc. So it's hard to answer. But in terms of the one that's been cited around two matters, the STG going forward and the expert, I have a response to the 26th of March, which I believe responds to his email of the day before, or 2 days before.
Can I ask, is communication still very much to the front between all parties involved in trying to deliver the project at Casement Park, or has it come to a complete halt?
Well, I have to say, up to the 30th of April, I mean, my personal tone, with the chair of the STG, Paul, next week I can meet you Tuesday, Wednesday onwards, Thursday, Friday. Let me know what suits. I'll come over to SMI if easier. Paul, I've been out and about. I'm free to meet 23rd, 24th, 26th, 27th. Morning, Paul. I'm following up on the previous note of yours on the discussion you get together. So, hi Paul, let's go for Wednesday if we can. I'll come over to you at SNI around 3:30 as I'll be on the road from a previous meeting. Hope that's okay, but drop me a quick note if you can, please. Thanks, Paul. See you just after. That was the spirit I engaged with at the time. That says to me, that's, I'll let the facts speak for themselves. Nick, excellent relationship. Again, there's correspondence between us. Yes, there was busy weeks, and yes, there was stuff, right, I need to think about it, or we need to have thoughts, etc. So I think there's certainly an email where I said to Nick, sorry Nick, I have a number of matters here, going to try and pick up a few points that we've been kicking around between us. So that's in my time, the facts, all prior to the events at the end of April.
Okay. Chair, can I just ask, have we got the email that in whatever pack, or give me guidance to where we could go to find it, to where Paul Scott indicated that he would be more or less happy with the exiting plan? It's not the words he used.
That's only since been part of
Apparently we haven't received that.
We haven't received. So could I ask, could we
Yes.
Well, it will
ensure we
be,
get a copy
it will
of
be in the
that?
pack that's coming from Rory Skelly, or from whoever.
Sorry, have you seen Paul Scott's bundle?
Yes.
And is there anything in that, or if there's anything in that that's missing, or that you can add to, that you think could benefit this inquiry, then could we get that, please?
And that was a large part of, I appreciate it may have seemed that I was, but that was a large part of me trying to say Paul's bundle is factual and there are records of documents. I'm just providing other documents in between, not only to show the position but also set the context and the facts.
So could I formally ask then if there's any
Yes.
other information that would help us come?
We're about to get a third bundle.
Yeah.
We'll have the one from Paul Scott, which is around, but we've also got the bundle then from Sporty and I, and now there's another one to come.
Okay.
And you'll get a fourth one as well from probably in the depths of the bowels of decal somewhere, and files and all the rest of it.
Well, if it comes to a conclusion where health and safety issues that have been raised
Absolutely.
This is started.
in any inquiry,
Yeah.
not just this.
That's what this is about. Entirely. Dominic Brandon.
Thanks, Chair. Rory, one of the things that surprised me in what you said earlier on was you mentioned Ravenhill ground, and if I picked you up correctly, you said that measurements were being taken, regarding safety issues. 3 days, I think you said, before the STG compliance was issued. Is that right?
That's just to be fair, to set the context of that, that's, you would expect sort of spot checks, etc. That in terms of by an independent party. So,
Oh, can I ask you, if you discovered under those circumstances that there was non-compliance and the stadium is built and ready to open, what could you do about it?
well, and this is the relevant part. Just for clarity, that we're STG personnel. So suffice to say, we were.
Right?
They were STG personnel out around pre-match inspections, just as we are about to hit operational readiness. So I don't want that perceived in any way that they were the designers, Ulster Rugby, or the contractor checking their own work, because those checks and balances would have been done a long time before that.
Yeah, but what you said was that these measurements were being carried out.
Checked and verified.
So you said that they were being carried out before STG compliance was issued.
No, apologies. It was the STG chair and his assistant carrying them out.
Yeah, but surely, the situation that we want to be in here is that we have the highest standards of health and safety regarding emergencies, exiting and so on in place, so that, there are no worries about checks and
and I welcome the question, because I'm unclear, because clearly how the STG followed, did designs, give advice. If their assurance levels also require spot checks at physically what was built, certified it by an architect and the builder and everyone else, it's as a double or triple check.
But the impression you were given was, this is nothing unusual, 2-3 days before, the stadium opens or a big event is going to take place.
But that was
you mentioned the match, we're carrying out these checks.
Well, I certainly found it curious. That my response was given in regards to the question was there ongoing STG input during the construction of Ravenhill? And notwithstanding my current position, my position then, the answer from...
Can I ask you this question? Does the physical capacity, or is the physical capacity of Ravenhill, is that reflected in the safety certificate that was issued by Belfast City Council?
Yes, Ravenhill has a current valid safety certificate for 18,000, circa 180 or 200, something like that, with a P value of 1 and an S value of 1. So, just as a statement, that's the current position.
So the match exactly, is that what you're saying?
Sorry?
The match exactly?
What matches? Apologies.
The number, the capacity?
Yes, they're both 1. They have no restrictions. They have a certificate for 18,100 odd, and there's no restrictions on it, so that is the current position. And as long as they continue the good practice and the management operations in place, they need to protect those operational best practices.
Okay. One of the aspects of this inquiry is about learning lessons. We're seeking to establish what lessons can be learned from the Casement Park project with respect to emergency exiting. You know, when you reflect on, you know, what has gone before you being here today, what would your reply to that be?
It's a very good question. Suffice to say, given my timing coming into the programme and the position on Casement and the journey it's been through recently and delving back very recently into historic matters, I'd want to give a constructive answer and thought to that going forward. Clearly, for me, clarity, communication, the right people in the right roles, supported with the right reporting structures is fundamental. If you're asking me in terms of what's my view in terms of how to approach such a complex issue, I am not an expert in the Green Guide, but we have enough people within the wider project and programme that are. So in terms of, it must come down to communications, clarity, documentation, and which on every other capital project is the way projects are successfully delivered.
Okay, and what would your role be going forward in ensuring that those issues that you've identified will not be problems in the future?
Again, I believe I started that with the Let's Look Forward discussions in December between Sport and I at senior level, myself and the department. And I was very much along the, if there's, send us into the terms of references, if there is one, after a period of time, it's clear there wasn't one. I took the initiative, I sent the first draft, I says, here's our thoughts on it. I asked for can we have a methodical structure going forward in terms of regularity of meetings. I suggested as soon as Alan news available for, so I very much between December and, up to March and the etc., I took the practical. Certainly, I have no desire to go through what process that I have to come here and read from a distance, from experience.
Well, I understood from what you said earlier was that when you came in, your attitude was like the past is the past, let's forget about it and move forward. Whereas surely you need to take the lessons from the past and ensure that they are learned and that the forward movement, the future, is different from the past.
That's exactly why, when it became clear, after this, there's no terms of reference, that's why we said, get a terms of reference. Groups should not meet. If meetings are held, produce full, accurate minutes. If that needs support to produce the minutes. If part, again, of the discussions is the timely flow of information. If a group meeting's being called for the 30th, if the papers aren't issued on the 24th, cancel the meeting. That's not raised. That is not the way to, and that's all I ask. And
you started in late 2012, is that right?
No.
When did you start?
Part-time in March 2014 and full-time in August 2014.
Right.
So
the terms of reference didn't arrive until the 29th of April.
Well, you heard this morning that Sport NI's expectation was my predecessor was to send them. I can't comment. I believe you have my predecessor in the chair.
You were already in place well before the 29th of April 2015.
Sorry?
You were in post well before
the
29th of April 2015.
Yes.
But the terms of reference only came by email, or the intention to establish them?
No, that discussion started in December. I came in full-time in August. I reviewed the scenario, and you have to bear in mind that from August to December, we were in JR process and a determination in December. Well, actually, before the JR was even determined, I was talking about whatever happens, let's try and get the right structures going forward. And my email chain, so I did the first cut and I did the active suggestions in terms of going forward. As we've clearly said, they're with the STG for consideration. That'll run its course, and I look forward to engagement whenever we can start again. So in terms of the SNI comment around back in 2012, who should have produced them, I let other people to come to have that discussion because I was not around, but I certainly would not run a process, have members in a panel and meet without a terms of reference for 2.5 years. And if I didn't receive them from someone else, I'd write them myself.
David Linder.
Okay, we're struggling a bit against the construction industry here at the moment in the background. But anyway, you've said that communications, clarity and support are key elements going forward.
Yes.
What sort of a structure that isn't there at the moment would ensure that those elements are all built into the future?
Again, that's what informed, on the back of discussions in December, etc. In terms of looking forward, that's why the practical measures around secretariat support for accurate minute taking. See, you have to understand that the STG would, in the normal course, receive a volume of information from contractors, from the department, etc., and that needs to be distributed to all the STG members. So there's an admin function there. It needs to be done in a timely manner. So those are the practical measures that personally I would expect should have been in place in terms of looking forward and lessons learned for the STG in the programme. That's what we started to put in place in terms of supporting the experts in their field.
Are we saying that the whole project and all those involved in it at various levels, they need a communications manager to manage all the information?
I'm saying, well, on the basis that I find evidence that 5 sets of notes weren't issued to the department, clearly, well, that was a result of work pressures, time pressures, whatever it was, something needs to be put in place that doesn't happen again.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I like this idea of if something doesn't arrive 5 days in advance, that the meeting is cancelled.
If it doesn't happen?
Yes, if it doesn't it'd be interesting to be apply that to the department.
Well, I take the Chair's point. It is common practice in terms of reference.
Absolutely.
Quorum of meetings, frequency of meetings, circulation. Normally 3 days is 3 working days is the norm. But I take your point.
I have 2 more names here, Basil McRae and David Hillings, and then we'll call the day on this. And could I also add, we have still papers to clear after this. First of all, it'll be concise. Basil?
A piece of paper.
Sorry.
So, just wanted to, there was some discussion about the use of the pitch and feed. Karen managed to bring to the point, not didn't manage, but brought to the point about surely this will be incorporated in the Red Book. The question was, what is the issue about the pitch? So let me just quote to you what it says from the Red Book. And this is why I'm interested, Mr. Dadley, about whether you're going to say we're going to deviate, we're going to do our own, presumably our yellow book. It says, quote, while in practice...
What's the yellow book?
I'm just saying we're going to get a new book, we've got a green book, we've got a red book, this will be the next book.
The white for peace.
Right, so here's the quote, Karen, which I think answers your question. Quote, while in practice, spectators may evacuate onto the pitch or area of activity in an emergency, in other words, you can do it, this should not form part of the calculation of the emergency evacuation time for grounds or sections of grounds. The pitch should be available for forward evacuation as a place of comparative safety in an emergency. But it says categorically here in the Red Book, and it actually says it in the Green Book, It says you cannot use the pitch for calculating your evacuation time.
Sorry, the
So
last,
are we saying we don't...
can you just reiterate the last sentence of that, please?
It says the pitch should be available for forward evacuation as a place of comparative safety in an emergency.
Right, so forward evacuation is you get onto the pitch, you walk and you keep walking. So you use the pitch in an emergency scenario for forward evacuation. What the guide rightly points out, you shouldn't use the pitch if you're going to marshal people onto the pitch and they've nowhere to go. So that last sentence,
All I'm saying is I wanted to answer this bit. What I heard from Mr. Dadley was, look, there's experts can put different interpretations on it. All I'm saying is this is the Northern Ireland Red Book. This is the guide. This is the standard that the Department of Culture, Arts and Leisure brings out and that I expect the decisions to be made to until somebody changes the book.
and sorry, the last sentence of that says that the pitch may be used.
And actually, if I wanted to go, it's late, but if I wanted to go into detail about it, having read all of the papers, I can say you can't use reservoirs if there's no exit from those places.
Could I suggest...
But that's the exact point, Basil.
Is it
Apologies.
a reservoir?
No, that's the exact point of the guide. It says you can use, my outlook, a layperson, it can be used as long as people keep moving. And that's the subject of detailed discussions with Paul. How will the crowd modelling show that people
The issue
moving?
here, I think,
the day
is
and I'll
around-
stop, absolutely.
Whatever you call the UK sports special people that look into all these things, I can't remember their name.
The UK Safe Sporting Grounds.
Safe sporting grounds. If we actually get some clarification that's independent, because
The only point I wanted to put on the record, I agree with that. The only point about it is that some people said, Mr. Scott said this, was he right to say it? And all I'm telling you is, my reading is Mr. Scott quoted from this book. And that's why...
That's the facts. I don't...
You don't demur from that.
we'll park that issue as issue, and we'll be coming back to it. David?
Thanks, Chair, and Rory, again, thank you. What was deemed to be the Safety Technical Group report of the 15th of October 13, prior to your engagement, where does that sit with yourself? Do you pay cognizance of that? Have you read it? Have you... Is that part of something you would have picked up?
Yeah, I've read through it, and again, as Paul, the chair of the STG would know, it was their view at that time. So,
because there's quite a substantial piece even at that time when the provisions exiting.
But I come back to where's on the basis of the further work done on 14. What's the updated position? That's what we need to get to. That's what the inquiry and the power needs to review. Where's the work reflected that was undertaken in 2014? Where's the updated report from the STG on it?
As I started off with openness, that was my original point. There was a meeting on the 17th of April 14 between Nick Harkness, Kieran Sutherland, Carl Sutherland, Kieran McClurk and whatever, in relation to options and solutions. And demolition was on the table. Yet at the last meeting that you attended here, which isn't that long ago, you indicated to me that demolition was not being considered.
Again,
I know it's a sensitive subject,
I
and the
understand.
residents have left at this stage, and that's why I left it with you.
I wasn't at the meeting. I can understand that if guys were saying we've a raft of options, for example. I've previously made the point around the context in which that commercial and sensitive information was
I
given.
don't want to go away this evening thinking that you have misled me badly because you told me it wasn't an option the last time.
No, I think if you check the record, it was very clear the department would not be buying and demolishing houses. It would not be funding that. That's you know how so just to be absolutely clear on that, and I believe that's documented through other papers, the department would not be funding to buy houses. Full stop. And I think that was the thrust of my point at the time. Second, the GA want to consolidate their title like any developer; they're entitled to do so. The real question, again, for the process and the power, is to tease out: is that the only solution? Was that the only solution at the time, or was it one of a number of solutions that needed to be worked through? So I genuinely, I just want to make that point in terms of if that's...
No, fair enough. And I say we deal with a situation which is unique. I've said it many times. When you quoted a lot of stadia throughout the world there at the outset, and I've been to a lot of those ones, and there's a great big walk around area around most of them, and we're dealing with something completely different in this situation. A real challenge.
I seem to get involved in challenging projects.
Okay, thank you. And it will be extremely short.
Very
30
briefly,
seconds.
Chair, technical question more than anything else. If we are using either green or red books, and I think the green book was quoted, I think, in a number of things, and the green book would obviously be written for British, for Britain, and whatever, it doesn't take any consideration, as far as I look, and we've established that the pitch can be used in an emergency, it doesn't take any consideration that a GAA pitch, and certainly a hurling GAA pitch, is twice the size of a soccer pitch, and rugby pitch was only a third of the size, or 2/3 of the size. So there has to be that consideration in terms of size and in terms of accommodation.
And I think that's the technical modelling and the experts absolutely
So that's
assess
just
that.
my point.
Yeah.
Just can I clarify a couple of points and then we'll finish. When Peter May was in, he said that the Minister would be briefed by previously Joe Malloy or Kieran McGurk, or by yourself, Rory, or Kieran, if that's right. How often would you brief the Minister?
There would be submissions in the system. There would probably be a discussion prior to sponsor board meetings, but not as a structured, formal sit-down session. For certainly in my time and my watch.
So before the sponsor board meetings, which would have been normally chaired by the Minister, you would have had a conversation with her, which would not be abnormal.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
unusual.
But it would have been in the context.
It's sort of pre-brief.
The papers had previously been issued,
Okay.
etc.
And did you have any meetings with the Minister Spad or Spads over that period?
He would have been in the room or with,
When she was there.
with her.
But no meetings with him or her apart from that?
Certainly not on a project-related technical issue, if that's the
That's
question.
fine there. Sorry, just a couple of points there. Yeah. And I just make an observation again that it does concern me that when we had the meeting in December, by which time I think that the scale of the issue should have been identified. It should have been brought to the attention of this committee that, which it wasn't, and that was disappointing in that case. Just you did mention that you had, and you give us in great detail, a long pedigree with the construction industry. Just for the record, do you have any current personal interest in the construction industry?
Sorry?
I'm saying, do you have any current personal involvements or interests in the construction?
I have an appointment as a non-executive director in a modular company that has no material or related interest in Stadia.
Thank you. Fine. That's us finished then, I think. Sorry.
With them. Yes, but
Sorry?
we still have papers.
Oh yes, sorry. No, I meant finished with our witnesses. No, I'm not saying that we would suddenly head off, the rest of us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonah. Can you remind me, we should leave the blue just on the desks. So just waiting to them thinking they have it already. I just
The council report.
Do it, we put it on the
Yeah, that fellow over there.
Is that the one that doesn't tweet? Ah, he doesn't tweet that.
No.
Could I just remind you all?
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you. Blue folders.
I'm employing the whole of.
Blue folders, please leave behind, and they'll be handed out again when we need them.
Chair, just to
Otherwise,
that's the one that's a collection of documents. We're going to create that on the cloud so that members can access it directly electronically through the device. It was just that we had it in hard copy because we were kind of starting it for the first
I have to say, I found it very hard to read. 264 pages. No, I'm serious. I'm serious.
No, absolutely right. That's why I walk around with all these files.
I'm just saying, I'm supportive of the cloud and all of that stuff, but to the bundle of papers that you had, you were forever going back. You couldn't find what
It's how you refer back. You lose that. Yeah. It's fine if you're just reading a novel or something. I'm sure. Not that I do. Okay. Got the witnesses there after that. Right. Matters arising. Can I refer members to correspondence?
You taken action points. Remember, I said to you.
I'm sorry. Yes. The stage you forget these things.
This will be very brief. In relation to the letter 8th of October 2012, when the Permanent Secretary mentioned about departmental approvals for the design to go forward, I wonder if we could ask the department to provide the paperwork surrounding the approvals.
Great.
Okay.
Good point.
Sure, members are agreeable to that.
Great.
Okay. And brings us then
We do
to...
have other, Chair, documents that were mentioned that Mr Skelly said he would furnish the committee with, we'll follow up on all of those. Those will form part of the request, and we'll do that automatically.
I have no doubt that when we get those, there'll be some trails or trains of thought that will emerge from that. That's the nature of these things. So it'll be an ongoing process. That's that word that was used so often today. Ongoing process. Now, referring members to the correspondence tracker at page 35, detailing outstanding correspondence. Members should note the response from NMNI regarding the storage of artefacts has been received since the publishing of this pack and will be referred to later in the meeting. To refer members to the response to the Minister at page 36 regarding issues around Casement Park. The committee's outgoing letter was issued before the Minister's briefing and this response received after. The Minister expanded on these issues during her briefing. Are members content to note that?
Agreed.
Refer members then to the letter at page 38 from the IFA. The committee wrote to the IFA stressing members' concern that the structural report relating to the recent failure at Windsor Park will not be made public. The Chief Executive has responded indicating that the IFA will provide members with a full update as possible, I think that is, at their briefing on the 11th of June. They're with us then.
That's next week.
Great.
But not the report, Chair?
No,
Not the report.
We haven't.
He said he will give us, they'll explain that to us next Thursday.
The letter doesn't make reference to it.
And again, I think there seem to be a number of different reports in all of this, but we're keen to get the information and we'll get that hopefully next week. Refer members to the Clerk's memo, page 41, in relation to proposed actions regarding defibrillators and follow-up actions from the recent Community Resuscitation Strategy briefing. And Clerk, please.
Chair, this was just really to get a list of actions and seek members' agreement to go forward on those, which were writing to the Executive supporting the motion that was previously brought forward about an interactive register of defibrillators. Also, some of the actions we've undertaken in writing out to the arm's length bodies, the departments and so on, asking them to go forward and seek to do registration. It's really just, we talked about bringing that back to the committee so that members could see what we were going to do and then agree to it going forward. So it's really just to seek members' agreement to go forward with those actions.
Great.
Okay,
Chair, can I follow up just and ask on that? It was suggested that Politics Plus were to be
one of the things.
Sorry,
I expand out. One of the things was to seek reasons around or seek to find out if members can receive training, if Politics Plus can do that. Now, we had partial responses
Assembly
before.
Commission. We're writing to Assembly Commission.
And we're going to write to Assembly Commission to
That's
pick
fine,
that
that's
up.
great.
So that's on the list. Sorry, I should have said that.
Referring members to the Minister's response at page 43 regarding overheads with the Peroni building. Following the receipt of previous correspondence on this subject, the committee raised concerns that the actual cost of overheads were considerably larger than the estimated ones that formed the business case. In years 1 to 4, the variances of the estimated and actual costs range from $391,000 in year 1 to $212,000 in year 4. Members will recall that the Minister previously indicated these variances would be investigated and would form part of the post-project evaluation for the Peroni project. Do we know when that will be available, the PPE?
Chair, we have an indicative, I think, of the summer. But I'll go back and check that. What that basically means is that work is in progress and it'll be included in as part of the post-project evaluation. So it's
and we will receive that in due course.
We've already requested.
Okay. Referring members then to the decal response, page 46, fisheries, reservoirs and angling clubs. Following the recent decal briefing on reservoirs, officials have now provided clarification on the phrases additional reservoirs and new reservoirs. They've also provided a complete list of the reservoirs leased by decal from NI Water and responded regarding the sale of Knockbracken Reservoir. The Department is currently developing a tender process to award longer-term management agreements for these waters to angling clubs or community groups, which will provide industry groups the opportunity to bid for the use of these reservoirs. Are members content to note at this stage?
Great.
What are we supposed to do with that?
Noted.
Because there are some people that want to do about setting up of trusts and mixed use issues. So could we ask how that will work? I'm talking about like water skiing going alongside angling. That we should have mixed use. There should be a plan.
Is there someone? Could they be directed to talk to someone person in the department who deals with that.
Something.
Whoever's
Yeah,
fishing
we-
or in waters and things.
Could we,
Yeah, but
could we just say the follow-up that I'd
Yeah.
like to see? Who talks to who?
We talks to, no,
We'll find out
follow up
how that
on who
works.
the
There's
people
another
would be
issue, Chair,
involved.
and that is that
That's right.
local authorities were meant to get the first offer.
Right?
There's been a very poor
That's
uptake.
crazy.
Now, whether that's because they haven't been aware of it or whether they haven't been told about it, but they are the ones who virtually provided all of those reservoirs initially.
You know, I want
And
the
I'd
one.
like to see it kept in the public domain. You see, the ceiling, you know, to sell that there with fishing licences, it's going to be an encumbrance for some people, unless they're local authorities. Need to be thought out.
It's table.
Private hands can do it right.
Chair, we have engaged in a lot of correspondence on this, and our understanding was that the local authorities, it was put out in an offer. Now, in terms of actual specific correspondence with local authorities, we don't know, but our understanding was that first offer and preference was to go to all public authorities. Short of communicating with all the councils, whatever, I don't think we know that, how the process was, because it wouldn't have necessarily been Decal that did that, because I think the sale was done through
And water.
Northern Ireland Water instead.
Probably a wee ad in the paper somewhere, and, you know, not, people don't see that.
Well, Chair, can I venture to suggest that the committee writes to Northern Ireland Water, just to clarify how that process was undertaken, if members are agreeable? Okay.
Okay, thank you. The response from Decal at page 51 regarding the money provided towards funding of the 2012 Olympic Games in London. Both Arts Council and Sport NI contributed over £4 million each to the funding package for the Games. In return, they will each receive over £700,000 from the sale of the Olympic Village and the Olympic Lottery Distribution Fund. From future sales of property within the Olympic Park, Sport NI and ACNI will receive back amounts in the 2020s. So we'll live old horse, you'll get grass. Which will match the proportion of their initial outlay, expected to be 2.3 million for Sport NI and 2.5 from Arts Council. So you put in 4 million and you get back less than 3.
That's ignoring inflation too.
Referring members to the ACNI guidance notes at page 55 regarding musical instruments for bands. Clark.
Chair, we had two proposals for two letters when the committee discussed this before. We went and looked at the criteria, and it doesn't mention marching in the criteria, because one letter was to be the committee supporting the continuation of a marching fund band, but it is just a fund for bands, and the second letter was to support it being a fund for bands, but the criteria suggests that it already is open to bands. I wanted to seek direction from the department as to how to proceed on that.
Okay.
We just write to reinstate, and that's in line with your...
Yeah, we start right then to reinstate since it already is. It is open to all.
criteria
Whether you're
says
standing up,
band.
sitting down, walking, or sitting, you can apply. Right. Okay.
I'm not sure what route you want to take with that.
It was agreed the last time we would write on two fronts. One was to reinstate the fund, and secondly to extend it to include bands that do not parade.
Don't march, but the
simply sit
criteria
down.
says bands.
But they're already included.
It's already general.
Okay. Next one then. Correspondence from National Museums at page 229 had tabled papers regarding the storage and condition of artefacts. NI do not agree with the content of the article and that 99% of their stock is stored in appropriate conditions. The photographs used in the article were taken in 2010, and National Museums Northern Ireland have considerably improved their storage conditions. The committee also inquired about the Mary Joseph, a Kilkeel fishing boat. We also asked them all about the result, but anyway, there's two of them. This boat, the boats are in storage off-site and is part of NMNI's plans for the development of a maritime gallery. Difficulty is they've been in storage waiting for this maritime gallery for 40 years. Now, you don't want to rush people on these things, but could we, sorry, this is on page 229. It would be, I'll bring it back next week, just with a suggestion that we actually follow up on that a bit more.
Look, it's not in a hurry. You've waited 40 years, so we can wait another 40
Another
days.
week cannot make a difference.
It'll be 100 years away, this place.
Yeah, we're not
Right.
counting.
Email at page 68 regarding a possible breach of Fenton and Robinson copyright on the Decal website. That has been forwarded apparently on to what was sent to we were just
Chair,
copied in.
we've just asked the department to update us on what's going on.
No homes to go to.
Chairperson's business, and I've just 3 points. First of all, referring members to the invitation at page 72 to the inaugural NI Human Rights Commission lecture, details there. Secondly, referring members to the tabled invite.
I'll see you all there.
Noted.
You might. From decal to the Minister's reception to welcome participators and those involved in the 2015 Special Olympics World Summer Games. That's in the Lawn Gallery at 11 on 1st of July.
Chair, can I just very quickly say members did say when the Special Olympics briefed us that they would go out of their way to support that event when it happens. So we will continue to email that out to members on a regular basis to remind
Some people will be at some events on the 1st of July, but
we'll gather as many people as
the
we
final point there, we had
11 a.m. Yeah.
I think quite a frank presentation by Rory Muskelley today. I'm not sure that we would describe last week's presentation from the Deputy Secretary as frank. There were a number of times when there was reference made to constraints of the there was mention made of constraints because of the internal departmental work that's being carried forward. It would be helpful to get some clarity around this because others will be coming forward to us in due course. If we were to write to whoever we go to for legal advice, legal services, to get some clarity around is there an issue there, or is it the case that as the scrutiny committee, the statutory scrutiny committee, that takes precedence? If we just get some clarity around the legal position.
Okay,
Reid? And we're having it. Okay, that's fine. And you may please to note that if anybody has any other business, please mention it now. Hopefully. Great. And next meeting is on Tuesday.
Yeah, I need to go to Lou, hurry up.
Okay.
Tuesday the 11th of June at 10 in the Senate chamber.
Yeah.
We've had to swap to the Senate chamber because we don't really get it's still Thursday. We don't get
It says
this
Tuesday
room all
there.
day.
Sorry,
It should be Thursday then. Sorry.
So it's Tuesday.
We don't get this.
No,
I
it's
give,
Thursday.
I give my apologies in advance for the 11th. We're away with politics plus.
Do you have my charger? You have charger?
So
Meeting is now adjourned.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.